We'll call the meeting to order. Trustee Bowles is on his way, about a half hour out, as I understand, so he'll be joining us as the meeting's in progress. We'll now have the flag salute. Cynthia, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is agenda approval. Does anyone have any suggested changes to the agenda?
I do. Sorry, do you want to tell them, Mark?
Yeah, that's fine. I missed Mike Colvick's administrative cert. I thought it was 2 year, it's annual. And so that's an additional piece of paper you got there.
Okay.
And what number will that be?
It'll be item K.
Well, I don't know.
Well, we'll just push everything else down because I'd like to have all the action items.
Well, I'm going to suggest that we make it after K. And we make it number L.
Okay.
So it'd be the last action item.
One other, and this is more of a correction and understanding than a change in the agenda. The board position that you'll be appointing tonight is until November of 18 election. Or December of 18. Because originally, when they talked to the county, it was, well, they take the position of the person they're in. That's not the case. We're supposed to be in a 3-2 scenario all the time. So in 18, although 4 people will be running, there'll be 3 4-years and 1 2-year term.
Okay.
Okay. So we will be in a 3-2 position like we're supposed to be.
All right. Well, good. So any other suggested changes? Okay. We'll move on to informational. First item is foster care, and who's going to take the lead on that?
Are we going to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda with the amendments.
No, I don't think we need to vote on this
Okay, super.
unless there's any objection. Move on to foster care.
Okay, I'm Kelly Davis, and I'm the special ed director, but I also have another hat as the foster youth and McKinney-Vento homeless liaison for the district. So I work with the County Office of Education to make sure that we are supporting and covering our students who are homeless and our students who are either in foster homes or group homes or under the care of social services. And I'm hoping, Richard, it worked just a minute ago, that you can kind of see some of the stuff that I want to share. The county office provides a set of funding for training for staff about these populations. And so one of the ways that the district used the funds this year was to send a couple of us to go to a Sacramento training. It's a youth summit, and so I attended and Jackie Hers attended. And one of the workshops that I felt was most powerful involved helping the adults really get a sense of what it's like to be a foster child. And so if I have 3 volunteers, and they could be here or any of the board members, I have trash bags. And trash bags are significant for kids in foster care because oftentimes they don't have something to put their belongings in. And oftentimes these students don't have the opportunity to know that they're leaving the home that they're living in. Sometimes, 5, 7 days, sometimes 24 hours notice. So are there 3 people that would like to have a bag?
Trash bag volunteers.
I'm gonna pick somebody.
I'll volunteer, Kelly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tina.
Okay.
Here you have the middle school people.
All right, so anything you have with you, I want you to put in the bag right now. And I'm gonna pick Nikki. Put your stuff in the bag. And then I want to get my little info up here. You gonna show? Ha! There it is. Okay, so of all, I want to talk a little bit about homeless kids. And some kids fit both definitions. The educational definition that we use is individuals who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence. We have 66 students in Willits Unified who fit this definition. Some of them are living in cars. Some of them are doubled up with grandparents. Some of these students live in local hotels or campgrounds. And some of these students are teenagers who have had falling outs with their families and they're couch surfing. They're living with friends. I'll show you in a second here. Unaccompanied youth, that's our couch surfers, they're really at risk. They're 20 to 50% of unaccompanied youth were sexually abused. 40 to 60% have been physically abused. Half of the youth who were living in shelters report that their parents either told them to leave their homes or they were leaving and do not care. And it's really heartbreaking, but as a staff person, you might have a student in your classroom and they have a meltdown over something that you think is just minor, right? And what you didn't know was that they got kicked out of their house, or maybe they left their home because there was drug use going on in the home, or there was something unsafe happening there. So it's really hard for these kids to come to the table academically. Right now I'm going to be social services, and I'm going to ask the 3 people with bags to get up and move your seat. Choose a seat somewhere else. You have to move.
We bring our stuff?
Sorry, you got to bring your stuff with you. All right. Give me the next slide. Yep. Okay, so where are our homeless kids? Bechtel Grove has 7 students last year. This is the 16-17 school year, who were under the definition of homeless. Blosser Lane had 6. Brookside, think about our little guys. You're a kindergartner and you're living in a hotel or you're living in your car. 9 kids at Brookside. 7 Sanhedrin students and 10 Willits High School students were under our demographic of homeless. What do we do for our students? One of the really cool programs that was new this year that I worked with Blythe Post at the county office on is called a snack pack program. And actually a couple of students that are also in our special ed programs use this because they were couch surfers. But they just have to fill out an application. It doesn't have to be signed by an adult or a guardian that defines that they're not, that they're in a homeless situation. And they can take home a full bag of non-perishables for the weekend. Ramen noodles, a bottle of water, granola bars, things that don't have to be refrigerated. And we had a ton of kids that took part in this. It's partially funded by a church in Ukiah, but the county office folks are the ones that bring it up for our kiddos. And I don't know, Maria, did you have anybody at your school getting snack packs this year?
Yeah, we had one.
Okay. Yeah, so there were several at the high school that I'm familiar with, and I think we had a Blosser kid as well. So it's a great program. We always have school supplies and clothing. I think that we just ordered new sets, and it's just things that, basic needs: socks, t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, things like that. So we do provide that. And one of the things that we want to work a lot more about is, how do you help a student be able to accept those things, kind of keeping it confidential and helping them to, they really do need it, but making sure that that's not a conversation that's happening in front of other kids in the classroom. Or so one of the things I'd like to work with our staff this year is to do a little bit of training on how to sensitively have those conversations with kids that have those needs, because it's hard. And then there's coordination that happens with our counselors and our support staff and Blythe Post, who's our county office representative. Those of you who have a bag, it's time to move. You got to get up. Sorry, you were really settled in that place and you felt good and you kind of liked the people you were sitting by, but I'm sorry, that foster parent can't be a parent anymore, so. All right, let's talk about foster students. We do have one large population of foster students in our town. We have something called MC3, which is a shelter that's run by Redwood Children's Services, and so it's an emergency home. It's over right next to the PD. It's that 2-story kind of house building, and at any given time, we may have 5 to 10 students there. They come from all over Mendocino County. Some of them have been in a group home, and you know, they need a new placement. It's a short-term 30-day placement. Willits Unified typically provides short-term independent study for those kids because they're not there for a long time. So, you know, maybe they were enrolled in a school where they were living in a foster home in Fort Bragg. They have to move. They don't have a new place. They come to Willits for a short period of time. So our independent study teachers provide for those kiddos. If they end up going to be a longer time, it's our obligation to enroll them in one of our school sites. And if they have an IEP and they need special ed services, we need to be able to provide those IEP services while they're there at MC3. In addition to that, we have lots of family foster homes in town. Not enough. It's a crisis, and many of our kids are at the shelter because they can't find a foster placement for them. With our foster kids, we have 5 at Bechtel Grove, 1 on independent study. This is last year's data. 7 at Willits High, 11 at Blosser, and 15 at Brookside. So 39 total.
And that's 7.5% of our student population are either foster
For homeless.
or homeless.
So foster kids, they really have a lot to overcome. 5 to 8 times in a year, so, you know, it might be time you guys get up and move again, because, you know, it just didn't work out in that spot, so you gotta get your stuff, sorry. And you're gonna meet a new teacher, and you're gonna have to enroll at a new school. And we want you to do really good on the test that's happening on Friday. Are you getting the picture? More likely to perform below grade level, twice as likely to be held back in school, high levels of dropouts, and suspensions and expulsions are a lot higher for kids who are in foster care. And this is something that was really emphasized at the training that I went to in Sacramento. Most of them are not college bound. They just don't have somebody to guide them through, to help them know what the A through G's are. And so it's an area that we want to get a lot better at.
Do some of them break through and head to college?
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the cool things at this conference was they had youth in their 20s who had graduated from college speak and talk about what made a difference for them. And what made a difference for most of them was someone in the school setting who cared. Somebody who took an interest. Might not be a teacher that they had for, you know, they moved a lot, but knowing that there was somebody who really believed in them, and that was one of the factors for success.
The data I read last said 2/3 of the students don't graduate who fall into those categories.
Yeah.
Or take a 5th year at least to graduate.
Right.
They don't graduate on time.
Right, they end up being super seniors or
Right.
going to adult school. This is our Willits data. What I thought was interesting about this, and this came from Aries, is that there's a much higher degree of students who have 504s, which is students not necessarily with an IEP, but have a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act who are in foster homes. And what tends to happen is they have a lot of stress. They're maybe diagnosed with ADHD, which, you know, could be organic, but it really could be that they're stressed out all the time. And so they end up with 504 plans and a lot more students who are special ed. School mobility. So one of the things that we're working really hard countywide is to let kids stay at their school of origin. So we only have a handful of foster homes in Willits, and you're a 5th grader, and something happens with your foster home and you can't stay there. You have to move to a foster home in Ukiah. There are laws that say that that child has the right to remain at their school of origin. So if they lived in Willits and they started off at Blosser, the school districts need to be able to figure out how to get them from their foster home in Ukiah to their school in Willits. And so one of the things that I spend a lot of time doing is making phone calls, working with a transportation company to get them, a ride. Sometimes the foster parent can do that. Sometimes the foster parent can't do that, but the students really, under the law, have the right to be at their school of origin. It takes kids about 4 to 6 months to recover after changing schools. So lots of our kids have changed schools 3, 4, 5 times a year. They're less likely to participate in extracurricular activities. So if you're moving in the middle of football season, you're a great football player, it's too late, So that's something else that we really want to work to get kids involved right away when they arrive and find out what their interests are and really get them into the extracurricular activities. And then of course they're moving around, so, oh boy, I didn't get all the credits for history because I left right before that history final. Those are some of the realities. So there's a couple of key laws. I'm not going to spend too much, there's not time to go into the details of those, but there's a law that protects students to remain in their school of origin. I just talked about that a little bit. AB 167 helps them with their credits. So if they were at one particular school and let's say it took 200 credits to graduate and then they move and it's 220, if you're in foster care, you have the right to graduate at the lower amount of credits. And so we really want to expedite transcripts for kids that are going back and forth from district to district. And then there's a law that talks about making sure that the child's social worker and attorney are informed of things like suspensions or if there's a behavior or discipline or an IEP meeting. Sometimes those students don't really have they don't have a parent to advocate for them. So we have to make sure that we know who the social worker is, the child's attorneys are invited, and that we're communicating very clearly with those people who advocate for the child. And then this is kind of one of the reasons I'm here and I'm working with Blythe Post is that we really do need to, we have foster and homeless youth under our LCAP. We really need to make sure that we're aligning with our LCAP, the needs of these kiddos, and making sure that all the agencies are collaborating as well. There's a committee called the Multidisciplinary Team, and it's made up of probation and social workers and counseling agencies, and so Willits Unified has a place at that table. Often our county rep attends, I attend at times, and so we help to make decisions about trying to keep kids in more stabilized placements. Transportation, we talked about that. These are some of our local supports. Redwood Children's Services and Tapestry Family Services, they have counseling. They train and support foster parents. They also work with parents on parenting skills and trainings. We have our little NCO and Head Start, which is over at Brookside. Some of the students are supported by Regional Center, obviously CPS. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And these folks help represent kids, for example, that don't have a parent to come to an IEP. So that CASA would come and represent the educational rights of that child. And Mendocino Youth Projects, there's a few other smaller providers, but those are pretty much the ones that support our Willits kids. Here on site, our staff, our principals and our counselors, teachers, we really do have a lot of people, as long as you know, that sometimes that kid is not upset because something you did or said. It's about things that are going on in their life that we're not familiar with or aware of. And so we really want to work with our staff about not thinking about what's wrong with you, why are you, yelling, or why did you throw all your papers? We want to think what happened to you. Providing context, thinking about compassion, and helping see these kids as really resilient because they are.
Ellie, what if somebody wanted to be a foster parent? How did they do that?
I think that probably the quickest, easiest route would be to call one of those two agencies that were listed. There's another one, TLC. You may find in almost all of the local papers they frequently advertise, and there's a phone number. But I would just look up Tapestry Family Services. foster parent training, and they're really looking for foster parents.
There's some really excellent adult empty nesters who
There
live in
are.
town. who
There
would
are.
be really positive role models for students.
Indeed. We have some wonderful foster parents, and I think many of us that have been around Willits for a while have worked with some of these, and they have cared for hundreds of children, in the last 10 to 20 years, and really found that they've helped kids be successful. The trauma these kids are going through, it doesn't excuse their behavior. It's not like we're saying it's okay to act like this, but explains it, so it helps us put in supports that the kids need. And then we also want to make sure that we're giving them consistency and safety. So, it's one thing to help understand and get them into resources, but we want to keep things the same. We're not going to change or bend the rules because kids want to be things to be predictable. They're looking for a good, adults that are safe, firm, fair, kind, and consistent. And so when they can make those meaningful connections, it helps them to regulate their emotions and know, I might not know where I'm going tonight. I might have all my stuff in a plastic bag, but I know, that, Miss Trina's going to be there when I get to school, and she's going to see me in the office, and I know that every day she's going to greet me, and it's going to be okay. Then there are some resources, and I have one quick little video, and I think this wraps it up. And those of you who have a plastic bag, you have found an adoptive placement. You can unload your plastic bag and go stay in your permanent seat. For the school board.
Students in foster care face tough challenges. Being taken away from their homes and families can be devastating. A large number have been abused or emotionally traumatized. This can leave them feeling lost, unwanted, and overwhelmed by anger or sadness. In addition, they get moved around a lot. On average, they transfer schools 8 times while in the foster care system, often 3 or more times in the first year. Moving can mean losing friends, siblings, and other important connections. With all this instability and emotional stress, the demands of school are just too much, making it hard for them to do well. That's not a recipe for success. As a school board member, you can help foster youth in your schools overcome these obstacles by supporting 3 primary strategies that, when properly executed, can really help foster youth succeed. Focus on the 3 S's: safety, stability, and support. Safety starts with identification. Do you know who they are and what they need? Foster youth don't want to stand out, and who can blame them? But schools can only help foster kids if staff know who they are. Then staff can help protect them and make sure they get to school safely and have access to the emotional and psychological support they need. Staff also must protect the privacy of foster youth. There are laws that dictate who may access their information, but the flip side is that it can make coordinating their care even more difficult. The second S is stability. Staff can help minimize school transitions. Many foster parents are not aware of the child's right to stay in the same school, even if the child switches to a new family. It's imperative for staff to advocate on the child's behalf, including reaching out to and coordinating with education rights holders, those who have legal authority to make education decisions for foster youth. They also need to work with other school staff, other foster care youth advocates, and sometimes the courts. If a change in schools cannot be avoided, staff can make sure students in foster care are immediately enrolled in their new school, get partial credit for the classes they've taken, which is essential for high school students trying to stay on track for graduation, and oversee a timely records transfer. The third S is support. Foster youth need strong academic guidance. Part of the staff's role is to reassure them by saying, yes, you can go to college, and help them get the support they need to complete the courses that meet A through G entrance requirements for California colleges and universities. Foster youth can be resilient, but they need encouragement and support to push past the difficulties they face, especially when they're down. Finally, support includes networking.
Beyond school and social services staff, foster youth need to be introduced to a network of people. They need help meeting and forming relationships with educators, community members, and business leaders who can help them persevere through college, find a job, pursue a career they are passionate about, and find their place as productive members of society. School board members can help foster youth by learning about the substantial amount of time, resources, and effort it takes to best serve them and provide the staffing, funding, and support necessary. We encourage you to do what board members do best. Ask questions, do your homework, be proactive. There are tens of thousands of California K-12 students in foster care. They face some very difficult challenges, and the least we can do for these foster youth is everything we can.
That wraps it up.
Thanks, Phil. Any questions?
Thank you for your.
You're welcome.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
So I actually do have one question. You said there was 3 agencies who you would contact if you're interested in being a foster parent?
So the agencies who have foster homes in Willits and Mendocino County are TLC, Tapestry, and Redwood Children's Services. There are others, but those are the primary foster agencies in our, yeah.
Thank you.
Kelly, are you gonna do anything on the other item, the memorial?
Oh, Lois, yes. You ready to move into that one?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're now moving to the Lois Belva Memorial. Please.
So, turn that off. Lois Pleva was the special education director, program specialist for special education for Willits Unified, speech and language specialist and teacher in our district for over 30 years. Before she worked for the district, she was a County Office of Education contracted employee and provided speech therapy. She passed away from pancreatic cancer this spring. And so a group of district folks, mostly special ed, but other employees, would like to put together a memorial for Lois. And the site that's been identified is Brookside. It's one of the sites that she spent most of her time. Lois brought a lot to our district in terms of special ed supports and services. She helped design the 2 special ed classrooms when Wasser was built. She brought our workability program to Willits Unified. She piloted our blended preschool program, which has students with special needs in the same classroom side by side with general education kiddos. She really did, it's interesting. Paula said in the paper that, under a previous superintendent, we really did have some of the most fantastic special ed programs in Northern California. And I really have to say that Lois Pleva was a part of that. What we're asking the board to do is approve us to be able to pull together, people are wanting to make personal donations, but we'd like to have a permanent bench at Brookside. There's a couple of spots identified, but one of them is in the kindergarten playground. And so it would be similar to some of the other staff memorials that are here. There's one for a previous superintendent out front of the high school. There's one for Ed Olenek, and so it would be a bench where students and parents and teachers can sit, and it would say, in memory of Lois Pleva, and she loved lavender, so we want to plant some lavender next to the bench. So just wanting to get the board, let the board know that we're doing that, and if anybody has or knew Lois and would like to provide some input about where that might go, we're certainly happy to welcome ideas. That's that.
Thank you. We'll move on to WTA comments. Is there a representative from WTA here tonight?
I don't think so.
They weren't at the last meeting. I find that a bit odd that just because it's summertime that the WTA evaporates. Are the
They have a contract.
They only work, what, 9 months a year or something?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm disappointed. CSEA? Oh,
Good evening. I'm Dan Green from CSEA. It's kind of hard to come up here and talk after Kelly's little thing because all of our problems just seem trivial after that. The CSEA, well, classified folks been busy all summer. The cook staff's been at several schools cooking for summer programs. Maintenance has been fixing long-term programs. Grounds is working, custodians are cleaning up. They got new supplier, so there's a bunch of new different processes going on to clean stuff, floors and issues, so there's a learning curve there. In July, we did wrap up our carryover negotiations from 17-18 on health and welfare, and we also wrapped up the 18-19 negotiations, and it went pretty good. We feel it's all okay. The state signed off on it, so we just have to ratify it now, so hopefully that'll be done soon. And other than that, we're looking forward to another school year.
how did the change in the maintenance of the swimming pool work this year, or has it that started to implement yet?
It worked good. We replaced a lot of mechanical parts in the new filters, motors, new switches, new controls. That all went over pretty good. And of course there's a learning curve with some of the new policies, and I'd say it goes well, but Mark would be better to answer that process himself. It's really not my place. To talk about some of the issues, but
Okay.
I think the pool's working great. I personally haven't seen the water that clear in a long time. I think we're trying new chemical stabilizers and things like that into it, so we had a couple thefts, but can be expected. And some issues because we don't have a fence over there, and it's kind of temporary, so you just kind of move it, you can walk in and party all night long, so it's just growing pains.
Let's not advertise that.
They're already there, so you can't blame them, they're kids. But all in all, I think it's gone very well.
Okay, thank you. Superintendent comments.
Just go through a few areas. I'll start with the pool. We did replace a ton of things in the pool. The pool's fully operational. The only thing left now is the major heater that heats the pool. Basically, everything else has been replaced and repaired. And it's functioning very well. But as any pool, it's always a cycle. You know, when it's 104 out, the pool acts differently than when it's 64 out. And so we have to make sure we've put in an auto leveler so the water level stays constant. The chemicals are being filled in by a computer that checks and monitors on a regular basis. So it's gone pretty well. Procedurally for next year, I think there's some things with the summer program the city runs that we need to work out. I think the school needs to be more active in how that operates. But as far as the maintenance and repair of the pool, they've done a great job of keeping it up and running. You know, you're always going to have a few issues because it's a pool. Some of the other areas out in front of the high school is kind of a disaster area right now. We're hoping August 21st they're done. We had about 4 major issues to deal with out in front. One was drainage. The drains are sloping back, and so we had to have Caltrans put in 3 additional drain spots. We had an issue with access to pools and having to go behind the school. Our parking lot's pretty torn up that Granite's gonna need to replace and fix. But the bottom line is the front of the high school is gonna look a lot nicer. So we're hoping for that to be done by August 21st, because if not, it's gonna be a major mess with cars and traffic. So we'll deal with what we have to.
Well, it looks like it's reasonable for them to get that done by the.
It is. It's how many change orders hit the fan before now and then, because everybody comes by with the change order. we're working through the tree issue with the city to try and figure out what to do with some small quirky growths that are there. And so we met the other day with everybody, and I think they have a plan for it. But it's really in the city's right of way, it just happens to be in front of our property, so. Couple other places, in custodial, I have a custodial expert who I've had come in and look at our data, look at our spaces, and I'm gonna use him to do some in-service with our custodial folks, because they seem to be the missing component when it comes to in-service. Bus drivers, everybody else are getting it all the time, they don't. And so I found somebody who doesn't sell a product, they sell their service as an expert, and becomes really highly recommended. I've met with him, he has good ideas, he gave me an initial report, and I'm gonna read through that report and I'll be glad to share it with you guys. But it's something we need to get better at, and we need to focus on it. All of our areas are getting ready for the school year to start. High school's gonna have a great staff. We're fully staffed for next year with para and teachers, so we're ready to go. And so I'm pleased with how much we got done in a short, what seemed to be a short summer for me.
No? Thank you. Now move on to board comments. Lori, do you have any comments?
I do. But back to June, I was a little upset when I left. I am very disappointed with the way that the process is to make administrative changes. I know that we have rules that set up for the superintendent to appoint whoever. I don't always agree with that. I'm really disappointed that prior to interviews or lack thereof that I wasn't even informed. I've spent the last 3 years attending every single job interview that we have had. I'm all for honesty, transparency, and professionalism. So when we staff our schools with administrators that don't have credentials, that haven't been able to get the credentials, what are we saying to our community? That we do not value our students enough to have qualified personnel doing their jobs. And I'm very disappointed about the way the process went.
There is a credential in place, and
It was my comment. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, I'll just follow on what Lori's saying. You know, I think that we have to come to grips with a fundamental issue, and that's that the board really needs to stay out of personnel issues. It's really the province of the superintendent, and I think it's counterproductive for the board to be involved in personnel issues. The superintendent has to implement a plan. He has to do it with, or she has to do it with the appointees of their choosing to implement that plan. And so you can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. I mean, our role is really, as I've said many times, our role is to adopt the budget, adopt policy, and to appoint the administrators.
That's your opinion, Chris. Mine is different.
Well, I think it's the model of that's recognized across the state as the role of the trustees. I mean, others might have different opinions. The next thing is that I was saddened to see today that 2 of my classmates passed away. Carter Bickford, and I guess that's Christopher's father, and Grant Woodruff. They're both classmates of mine. I'll just say that Grant Woodruff was the leading running back in the Redwood Empire in his junior and senior years, and the strange thing about it was he wasn't a very good running back. He just got behind Drexel Smith, and Drexel would clear everybody out of the way, but he had the I think they didn't break his record until the 90s. And Drexel's also gone, so it's sad to see that my classmates are starting to drop away. I'm looking forward to beginning the school year. This is our last meeting before the school year. So this will be your second year. I'm anxious to see how we can build on the steps forward we took last year. Alex?
First, let me offer my apologies for being late. My vacation ran just a little longer than I expected. It's a long drive from Grants Pass, Oregon. Let's see, I would echo some of Chris's comments with respect to administrative appointments. I'm a firm believer that our administrator, our superintendent, needs to choose his team to be successful. I also am a strong believer that our principals, when they have the opportunity, should be able to choose their teams. Now, with the caveat that if there's a clear reason why I disagree with that, then clearly I'll voice my opinion to the superintendent when the superintendent wants to pick a principal, for example, that I don't agree with. By the same token, I would hope that the principals have a lot of weight with the superintendent when they want to choose a vice principal, for example. And again, I would hope that the superintendent will weigh in if he feels that that selection is inappropriate. In other words, I really do strongly believe that if you surround yourself with successful people, you have a better chance of being successful. And you have to be the best judge of those successful people that you're going to put in place. If the school board simply gave the superintendent his principals and vice principals based on what we believe is necessarily the best thing, I don't think we would be as successful. So again, Chris is very correct. We do need to appoint the superintendent, approve the budget, and set policy. But we can get down into the weeds a little bit, but I agree, we have to, for the most part, trust in the person that we put at the top, and hope that they're going to provide us with the services that we're asking for, and follow the direction that we provide as a board. Secondarily to that, I'd like to mention the fact that my wife and I went to basically a CTE-oriented conference in Las Vegas that focused largely on woodworking, but it also focused on some pretty interesting things with respect to, as an example, a STEM focused guitar building course it was developed as a National Science Foundation grant by a number of teachers that turned it into a pretty amazing program. So they've married a STEM program with hands-on building an electric guitar. There's another program out there very similar to it where they've focused the similar kinds of things with building skateboards. I'll bring all that information to the superintendent, and hopefully some of that stuff might be able to have some value in our organization here. We have the CTE facilities to make it happen. We obviously have the teachers to make it happen. Now it's a question of finding a way to get our staff to recognize that there's possibility of a way to provide more motivation to our students on both the CTE side as well as on the science, technology, engineering, and math side, and marry those programs. So maybe some kids that weren't that interested and focused on their education or the academic side, but when they find that there's an application for this, maybe they'll be more interested in that science, technology, engineering, math, the things that they find to be very dry. So that's pretty much it. So I'll provide all that information to the superintendent over the next week or so, and hopefully, maybe not this year, but hopefully maybe next year we can start looking at some of those things.
Yeah, let's see, I'm pleased we're ready with educators for the coming year. I think that's really exciting, not to be scrambling and trying to fill positions. I think that's really good for our district and a positive way to start off the beginning of the year. I really appreciate Kelly's informative talk you just gave to us. You know, that serves 70%, I believe. Is that what I heard of a population of our kids?
Seven.
Seven,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think I counted
Fortunately,
out.
it's not 70.
Yeah, right, 105 students, which is pretty amazing to me. And I really appreciate what you thought as the YouTube on the board of being effective. That makes total sense. At the same time, I really am pleased to hear that they're honoring Lois at Brookside. That's really special. She's done an incredible amount for our special education program for many years. And like Paula had mentioned before, of being on the cutting edge of things. And we're known for it. So I think that's a lovely way to tribute to her. That's really great. I also am looking forward to getting another board member. I think that'll be a nice way to start off the year too. I think that's a healthy way to do it. And I think it's to have an effective board, we need everybody. And in order to help assist the school and the superintendent and getting done what we need to get done. So with that, I'm feeling pretty good about things. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to action discussion. Do we have public comment on the consent agenda items? Yes?
I have one. Excuse me. I'm Dan with the CSEA. It involves item G, elimination and reduction of certain positions, classified services. This isn't entirely accurate. In July, we did sit down and we did come up with agreement with all parties involved to remedy this situation with our labor rep, and we had an MOU with the district, and when that MOU and everything was sent up to the state level, the state didn't like the way that the hours were changed, and so they kicked it back. So we're actually gonna meet on the 17th to try to hash this hour situation out with this situation on this one. So I wasn't quite sure if I should mention something about that or not, because it's not entirely accurate the way it's written.
I'm not sure if you're looking to,
It was the elementary librarian,
yeah, I know
the
that.
reduction in hours thing.
Are we looking to
Yeah,
start
we
there?
did negotiate, we did have an MOU on
Right.
that. But when it went to the state, they kicked it back. They didn't like the hour part, and I think Laura was aware of it, so maybe it didn't make it to this part here. So we are gonna talk about that again on the
Would you
17th.
prefer we table it and bring it back?
I'm not sure how that works, that's
Well-
your,
They don't vote on a resolution that we're not in agreement on,
oh, okay,
so
so maybe that might be.
I'm more
the
than
best
willing
thing
to
do.
table that while we sort it out.
I'm losing, item D, so you were
G,
G.
G.
Okay.
That's not on the, that's not the consent agenda.
Okay, so that's why I was confused.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, okay, that's
are you
the one.
suggesting, Mark, do we
Sure.
table that?
Yeah, we can table it,
Mhm.
that's
Okay.
fine.
I think we probably
Yeah.
should get that
I'll
sorted.
make a motion to table.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? So we'll now move on to anyone else, or anyone who would like to have comment on the consent agenda? Pretty,
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
okay. Do you have any we asked for public comment? We'll just move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. We'll move on to number C, approval of consolidated application, 2017 spring release.
Nikki has a comment on that. so you can make
Yeah, I
sure.
did just want to clarify that there is one form included in here which the state is asking for demographic data on the private school students. So we are required by law to provide services through Title I to any private school students that are residents of our district. And so we work with the Waldorf School of Mendocino County to accomplish that. And they were asking for some demographic data. The school was not open at the time that I was working on this because it was summertime, so I had to do my best on that, but there may be revisions to some of the particular demographic data. And I will work with that administrator at Waldorf to accomplish that.
I couldn't follow this item. Maybe you could just give us just a little more. What the item is approval of consolidated application. And then, if I'm reading there's agenda material that says consolidated application, and it's a bunch of numbers. Am I in the wrong place?
I think he's looking at the actual application.
Oh, the actual application. So the application has to do with our federal funding. And the state uses it both as the application in the spring for the following year's funding. They also use it throughout the year to collect data from us on how we're using those funds. So we report back on our Title I, our Title II, and some of the particulars on those programs. And so the consolidated application is a combination here of various expenditure reports as well as the application for 17-18 funding.
So we're telling the State Department of Education how we've spent federal funds.
Correct.
And they're probably acting as the agent for the federal.
Correct. They're the ones that disperse the funds to
I see,
us.
okay.
Yes.
And it's the title funds that we're budgeting at 80% because we don't know, every year they tell you that we don't budget 100%.
Do we have an idea at this late date?
I've been checking almost every day and there's still no updates. When you go on CDE's website, it still just has 2016-17 as the most recent information.
And was that funded at 100%?
I'm not sure how that was because I wasn't working with this district's budget prior to the budget year, so
I see.
I can't say for certain.
So it varies from district to district?
Well, because it's based on census data, and so
Okay, I see.
yeah,
I
it
see.
can be different in different districts.
Okay.
We're hoping it hits 100%. That's one of our expectations, but we can't budget what we don't have.
So we've budgeted 80%. So when will we get a picture of this? You said you're checking every day?
It
so-
has to do with when the federal government approves their budget, and if I recall correctly, they didn't actually approve the current year, the 16-17 budget until partway through the year. And so that gets us through September, is the end of the federal budget cycle. And I haven't heard anything about when they will be approving the next budget for the federal government.
Okay.
With all the investigations going on, they may not have any money to fund title programs.
So do we have a motion on this item?
Make a motion.
I'll
To-
second.
I assume to approve.
Yes.
Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, move on to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Passes. Move on to item D, approval of variable term waiver, administrative services credential, Mackenzie Erickson. Mark, I assume you're going to provide the introduction to
We
this.
did interviews for the dean position at Bechtel, and our top choice was Mackenzie Erickson, an on-staff member, and I think she'll do a great job, and this administrative credential will allow us to put her in place, and we'll both evaluate the progress at the end of the year.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions?
Do we evaluate the progress of these individuals at the end of the year, or is there an ongoing evaluation
Well,
process?
it's ongoing,
Okay.
but generally that is done through the building principal. They would evaluate the dean, the assistant principal, the principal at the high school.
Okay.
But it's ongoing.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Any public comment? Paul?
Well, I have the same concern for D, E, and F, so I'm just gonna say it now, and you can just know that I think it covered all of them. I have real issues also with people who go in for programs that don't yet have the credentials. It would seem to me that if that's an interest or a focus that someone's gonna take on, they would secure the credential first and then go take on the position. I'm pleased to know that these people are supposed to all be enrolled in classes, but that's still a big if. And it just would seem to me that if maybe it were a little more widely posted, especially a couple of those positions didn't seem to get posted out beyond in-house. And I'm going to continue to look into some of that, but it just seems to me that as a policy, I know you said, Chris, you don't believe in getting involved in personnel issues particularly, but this is a prime example. Every single personnel issue that happens in the district has to go before the board. And it would seem to me, and it's not just Willits that needs to look into it, it's throughout the state that boards deal with personnel and they make decisions because they are so directly affecting our students, you know. But just so that you're aware of that, that's what.
I point out the reason it comes to us because it requires a waiver, but as a matter of policy, or at least a matter of policy direction, we have, you know, going back several years, encouraged the promotion from within for our administrator positions, because it's a lot different, I think, that if somebody comes from the outside and, you know, don't know anything about them and they don't have the necessary credential. But when you're promoting within and giving somebody an opportunity to then give them time to get the credential and operate on a waiver until they do. When we're appointing from within, we know the people, we know, and they know us, and they know the system. So I'm pleased that we're able to motivate those from within to step up to these positions. And I think that's a credit to the district rather than a discredit.
And see, that's part of what I'm telling you is that there are credentials that exist in the district that are stable, they have been in the district, they like being in the district, and that sometimes the thought is that maybe they're not as considered as those who have just decided that they might like to try it out. Whether that's their own personal perception or not, it is just, for my way of thinking, we're an educational institution. We need to promote, I would think, the higher levels of education, because that's what we're trying to promote as we model to the, you know, the district students as well.
You would be hard pressed to find an August board meeting where you don't have waivers. In fact, I would wager to say you've had them for 10 to 12 years in a row. And finding credentialed people, especially in things like special ed, is incredibly difficult. And needing somebody to get a waiver to take a position is, generally speaking, a way to help us do that. It also gives us some assurance if they don't follow through, then, you know, they can't be reemployed. So even more than evaluation, they have to do their coursework. These people are doing their coursework. I like people doing their coursework instead of running and taking a test, a CLEP test, to get a diploma or a certification, because I think they learn a lot more from the classes.
Okay, so we have item D, approval of variable term waiver, administrative services credential for Mackenzie Erickson. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
No second. Okay, any public comment? Yes, sir?
Just had a question, follow up on Ms. Newman's, right? And what the superintendent said around the ongoing evaluations. Are they formal and are they posted to the board? So the board has access to these, you go through it, so you can see that, because one of the key elements of evaluation is access to what's going on. So you have, I would assume, a mentor, a kind of mentoring teacher.
There is a BITSA program that they belong to, that they have a mentoring teacher, but the evaluation of teaching staff is always done by the principal. Boards certainly look at evaluations when we come to make the decision about renewal, especially second-year teacher. So yes, they do see those evaluations.
Well, we will see them from this point on.
We did see them this year.
No, sorry. Because when we did the non-reelects, there were no evaluations. And that's something that we discussed as a board, that for future non-reelects, that we would get to see the evaluations.
Any other discussion?
Sorry, I was wondering who the gentleman in the maroon shirt is.
Yeah, it's my fault. I should have asked you to identify yourself.
I'm Fred Ransom, I'm one of the candidates, in the Air Force. And give you more of my background.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So, any other public comment? All, let's move on to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
So that passes.
Nay, it's a nay.
3-1. Move on to E, approval of provisional internship permit, Christopher Bickford, single subject social science. Mark, could you?
We are looking for a unique opportunity to fix some issues we have with freshmen. We have a disproportional number of freshmen who come to the high school who have failed classes. And one of the classes we want to put in place is a current events class taught by a social studies teacher that helps direct what they do, connects with the parents. They are the communication person between the student and the parent and the guidance counselor. They are going to monitor those at-risk freshmen through that class. And it is an opportunity for us. One of our big issues is incoming freshman success. We really struggle with freshmen, and every piece of data tells us that if a student comes in as a freshman and is unsuccessful in the fall, they become a high potential for dropout or alternative ed. And we're trying to stem that by focusing a teacher on that group.
This is a new program, brand new.
But it's a social studies program. There's no program out there that we're modeling off. We're trying to get our at-risk freshmen because it's a huge issue. It's a huge issue. We had 84 high school graduates from this building last year. There were 109, I believe, when they were here as freshmen. And so that's a major issue for us. Some of the students went to Sanhedrin and made it, and there were many who did not. And we need to stem that. And if you go back and look, it's nationally, that's the issue. Freshmen who come to high school and struggle. We have to put something in place to stem that. And this is what we want to try to do that. If funding goes to 100% in title, which we're hoping it does, that'll be where the high school spends that title money.
Okay.
So I want to know, what exactly is the provisional internship? Now, does Chris actually have a teaching credential?
Doesn't have a teaching credential, he has a bachelor's, just like the other people. And provisional is something that, I believe he had 4 last year. Is it a PIP, is PIP,
So
is
the
that?
PIP, so provisional internship permit, from what I understand, is, allows the candidate time to finish any prerequisites they would need to enter an internship program, and then the next step would be an intern credential.
And then, all right, so I understand that we had a qualified credentialed social science applicant for this position that never received a call back. So
Not that I'm
instead of
aware of.
accepting a teacher with the credential, we're jumped through hoops to make provisional to get a single subject teacher.
So I
I have
think.
no data on that. I've never heard anything.
Yeah, I think it's dangerous, because I don't think that that's something that we involve ourselves in, and finding out who the candidates are for various positions. I mean, that's not our job.
Chris, we live in a very small town. You know, you can't help but the agenda comes out and somebody says, well, you know, so-and-so applied for that position. They never got a call back. Why are you guys jumping through hoops to give Chris Bickford a job?
I'd be
I
a
have
lot
nothing
more
against Chris Bigford.
I'd be a lot more interested in that information if it was first-hand information, not third-hand or fourth-hand information. The way you describe it is, oh, so-and-so applied for that job.
No, I
and
know
then-
exactly who the person is that applied for the job.
Did they speak to you and tell you that they?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they did,
Okay, I'd like
Alex.
to get more information on that.
Well, too bad, because that's confidential.
Okay, well, it's pretty hard to deal with it if it's
Well,
that
you're not gonna
confidential.
do anything anyways.
I disagree.
Sort of like leaks out of the White House, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so, do we have any public comment on this item? Paula?
Yeah, this is the same kind of thing. I too happen to know the person, and I don't have a problem telling you who it is. I just don't like names and things in the middle of this, but I am dealing with it tomorrow morning through the DO, and I'll include you. The only thing that I would think, and it does, I don't know the kid, the person, the adult who's, I'm sorry, I don't know Christopher Bickford.
Yep.
But I do know that if the credential is almost his, it would seem that here's a prime example of how you can have a credential, almost, get the credential in a year or two when it's complete, then come back, apply for the job, and take an opportunity to work in this district, you know? And that way, people already with credentials don't have another recourse. And all I'm hinting at is that in the past, not in our district that I know of, but in the past of a couple neighboring districts, there were issues where people without full credentials applied for positions, and people with full credentials applied for the same position, and the full credential that didn't get it had the right to cause the district issues. I don't think we ought to open our doors for the possibilities of, oh, I can get sued or in trouble here, when it's not entirely necessary. If there was no one else around, yeah, you might have to consider it. But if there is, you just need to think about what you're doing and have enough information to know before you go ahead and do things, that's all.
And having the credential doesn't make you the right applicant.
It doesn't necessarily, but if you
And-
never give that person an opportunity,
And-
you don't know.
And hiring the best people is always the practice.
And that's a good thing. You just can't tell best until I mean, you don't know that this candy bar tastes better than the others unless you also checked out those other candy bars, so to speak.
Well,
Chris?
Oh, you have more behind you.
Yeah, just as a matter of policy, it seems like, you know, we have a credentialing program for a reason. And those people with credentials are higher qualified than people without credentials. That's why the state makes you jump through these hoops to get these provisional credentialing, you know, waivers. And so it just seems like all things being equal, you know, you go for a credentialed person first. And I think that's what the law states, that you have to go through all the potential, you know, do the search, and if you can't find the person with the credential, then you can go for this provisional waiver.
well, you know, this is encroaching on personnel type issues, and it makes me a little uncomfortable. It makes me uncomfortable, even the names of the people who are getting the waivers are indicated.
I believe that's a
It's
requirement.
It's a
Yeah,
requirement.
it just makes me uncomfortable because, you know, it personalizes. In this case, I think we all know the people, you know, this, as you point out, it's a small town. But, it does make me uncomfortable. So, any more public comment? Do we have a motion?
Before we go there, I'm always concerned about things happening behind closed doors that don't see the light of day. And I appreciate your concern also, Lori. However, I'm also, how do I put this? I would put a lot more weight on this if the individual that supposedly applied for this position but didn't get a call back was standing in front of the board telling us that, himself or herself. Right now, I'm faced with he said, she said, and it's all secondhand information, and it's information I got no way to validate one way or the other. So that leaves me faced with only dealing with what I have in front of me.
Well, I'd just say that as a board member, I'm comfortable with the recommendations of the superintendent, but I would like to have a confidential report to the board just
Sure.
of how this process works, so that as a matter of, we can address it as a matter of policy if anything
Be
jumps
glad
off
to.
the page.
And I don't see it as we're lowering our bar.
No.
I think our standard is still the same requirement. And I think we're meeting that standard by providing this provision to these people that I see as it works. It's just a healthy way to encourage, especially in a small town. And I see it in my profession. They do the same with working on things that way if you're interested into it, so that we aren't lowering the bar. So we're bringing these people up to what our expectations are. And I think that's really important.
With that, I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further public comment? Hearing none, move on to the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Yay.
opposed? Okay, so it passes on a 3-to-1 vote. Move on to approval of provisional internship permit, Shauna Jevons, education specialist, and I didn't understand mild, moderate.
It's a level of special education service. And it's one of those that you're not just a special ed teacher. There are various levels and certifications you have to do a certain room. And Shauna is interested in the position and willing to do what's necessary to get her fully endorsed by doing this program.
Is she internal? I mean, I recognize her
No.
name.
No, she's run the pool before, I believe, is she a graduate?
She's an alumni,
Yeah.
Ms. Jevons family. Okay, any board have any further questions?
I can clarify on mild mod. Mild moderate credential allows you to teach resource. So the disabilities that you're covering are students with learning disabilities that can access general education. Mod severe credential is to work with kids who have disabilities where they need to be in a self-contained program. They have autism, or they can't function the regular curriculum. So that particular credential is teaching our resource and our emotional disturbed classes. That's what she's on.
Okay, I found out almost like two alternatives in one phrase. So we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any public comment? Further public comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Sound like a horse up there already.
Chris,
Nay, nay.
please think about what you say to me.
Okay.
I don't
think about it.
appreciate being disrespected on that camera
do-
or in front of the community.
I don't mean to disrespect
It was
you.
very
Okay,
disrespectful.
I apologize. If you took it that way.
You just told me I sounded like a horse.
Move on to approval of resolution 2017-18-1, elimination and reduction of certain
Tabling
positions.
that.
Tabled that one.
We've tabled, okay. That's the CSEA issue that he was on. All right, approval of administrative salary schedule for 27-18. You,
Yeah, we just made sure that the current positions were referenced in there. There's no change to the monetaries, but we reference positions like assistant principal at high school. We reference the director of alternative ed and CTE. So the names have been referenced on the positions.
okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Do you have any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Move on to approval of MOU with Mendocino County State Preschool Consortium, 2718-I.
We had a lot of discussion about this last year. That's the preschool program that MCOE runs here. And they receive the funding and pay for the teacher and the program. Without it, there would be some significant district expense. So we're able to provide a preschool at a pretty low cost to us, basically giving the space. And so,
I think this might be referring to our state preschool, which the funding does flow through the district.
is that the,
State preschool. Yeah, so
oh, it's the state.
it's state funded, it flows through the district and the employee is ours. However, the county provides a consortium because the
That's right.
preschool has
Thank
very,
you.
very different requirements in terms of
Right.
attendance and various other things. And so, to relieve districts of having to monitor that one separate classroom, the county provides some of that oversight.
Yeah, and last year you requested the budget on this that I sent to you.
Right, and I also was unsettled by the form of the contract or the MOU. I mean, somehow I think you talked me into supporting this last year, but I
Well, we
forget.
made changes to it.
Okay, but I've never seen an MOU with bullet points. Just sort of, not even, some of them aren't even complete sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last year we made changes to it. You asked for, I believe, 3 changes that were made to it.
Okay, so maybe that's how you talked me into it, to make the changes. But
It's either that or we bear the burden of.
that was the punchline, is that if we didn't approve it, what happens?
Well,
We bear the
we're gonna have
cost.
some cost for preschool or not have preschool. I mean, we would have to pick up some significant additional cost, or we don't have preschool.
$24.62 per child per day.
Where do you see that? Oh, I see it there. So, what's the dollar amount on an annualized basis, Jim? Rough idea?
I don't
It
have it
was
off the top of my
somewhere
head.
around 85,
85,000?
the amount of the total amount for the program.
I'm sorry, I don't have that. I
Yeah,
can get it for you. I will say that when I did estimated actuals for 16-17, I believe that the state funding did fully cover the cost of the program. So, it's attendance-based income, and so that can fluctuate. The state also has implemented, there's some parent fees that are involved, for families that are over certain income, threshold. But at this point, the district is not making a contribution into the program.
So essentially, it's a no-cost, at this point, a no-cost program. to us.
Correct.
Other than space,
I'll make the motion to
in
approve.
kind.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Do we have any public comment? Move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm gonna vote no. Or nay. Approval of resolution 2017-18-2 curriculum adoption algebra 1 and 2 hybrid package.
Right. Yeah. The district had been using a CPM algebra program.
What does that stand for?
College preparatory math.
Thank you. And our results have not been great. One of the issues is there's a huge transition between what was taught in 8th grade and what a 9th grader needs. We need real pre-algebra skills. And so we're looking at moving to a pre-algebra in 8th grade to an algebra text in high school that's not as difficult to teach, as teacher in-service intensive, and to try and produce better results. Our results are not good in algebra success. So we need to make a different selection and move. And the teachers reference multiple sources, and this is basically driven by the high school because algebra that taught at 8th grade has to follow what the high school does. Sure.
make the motion.
Have a second?
I'll second. However, the question for you is, my assumption, if you confirm, is that this is driven by the teachers looking for a better product to teach.
Better product, yep.
So it's supported by the math department.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item? Yes.
I teach CPM. I taught it for 6th and 7th grade, and we actually really like it. We're medical teachers, but none of us are going to teach 8th grade math next year. So, but it's 6th grade built upon 7th grade built upon the 6th grade program, and I don't want to say it, it's like cycles it. Maria can explain it a lot better, but it is a really good program. And I don't know what they're looking at, but CPM also teaches the kids to work collaboratively, which is part of that 21st century skills or Common Core skills, and is really built into CPM. So it is a really good program. I don't know if this program does that or not. I think that would be a good question to ask. What skills it's going to build upon, more than just math content, because you need more than content out of your curriculum.
Any comment?
The program after adoption actually does have instructional strategies that mirror a lot of those that we use in CPM. It is a different program, and so it's set up differently, but we have been, the high school, we were not in it, special wasn't included in the conversation for the adoption, but because Algebra 1 is a high school course, it's not a middle school course, but we do teach Algebra 1. The program is different, however, getting at the collaborative activities and those types of instructional strategies is just a matter of having those best practices in there.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
You did, and a second.
Okay. Any further public comment? Move on to the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Move on now to notice of public hearing, public textbook and instructional materials adoption. CA collections.
Yep.
ELA.
High school language arts is
Okay.
woefully behind in textbook and curriculum. They have been kind of putting their own thing together for quite some time. And let's just say that there's not a lot of connection between the grade levels. We needed to resolve that. We also needed to resolve that with something that had quality instructional strategies, quality reading and writing strategies. This was done a year ago, prior to me getting here, that the English department went through and selected this text. It wasn't purchased last year. It never made it to the agenda. It was one of those things that got a lot of discussion and talk at the high school, but never made it to the district office level. But when I looked into what we do in high school language arts, it's very disjointed. It needs to be brought back into a common format, which this will help them do.
So this is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on this adoption.
And they are sitting in our district office as required for people to preview if they'd like to preview.
Okay, the public hearing is now open. Does any public wish to make any comments? Okay, close the public hearing. This doesn't require, does this require a vote? I didn't think so. Okay, so we'll move on to the last item, or the added item to our action item, which is item, we'll call it approval of variable term waiver for administrative services, credential Michael Kolvik. Okay,
Mike has been taking classes since May. I've worked with him, or March. I've worked with him numerous times. I think they're really quality classes. I think he learns a great deal from them. And again, I'm very much in favor of people taking coursework as opposed to going and just taking a test and getting an endorsement. I think there's a lot of quality things that happen in it. I've looked at the work that they do in the coursework. Other people have been taking them, and I think it's well done, and I think it's worth the effort. And so I appreciate the fact that, you know, it's available and they're willing to do it.
So is there a test at the end of the course?
There's a test at every class.
But, I mean, do you have to retain the information to pass the class? Is it a pass or fail, or you?
The classes are variable. It depends on the class, but yes, there's a test at the end to pass, fail, yeah.
Okay, so now do we have a time limit on?
Yep.
How
I don't
long?
remember the exact time frame you have to get it done in, but there's a time frame.
No, my question is, are we placing a time limit on these waivers for, you know, I'm gonna give you 10 years to get the credential?
No, the
Or are
state
we gonna
places a
give
time
them
limit.
one school year, or?
This is only good for one school year. as I
Right, it's only
understand.
good for one school year, so you have to be engaged in doing what you're supposed to do and following their program. If you don't follow their program, then you can't get the waiver. And in this case, we're following the program and I believe making good progress.
Any further board questions?
How long should this process take?
It usually takes about 1.5 to 2 years. If somebody were just going to go do that and didn't work at all, it would probably be a year. But yeah, it's significant coursework when you're working full-time at the same time.
Paula has a question.
Yeah, Paula?
Then, just to make it clear in my head, at the end of this first year, then the progress will be evaluated for everyone on these waivers, right? It's all
Right.
the same plan.
Yep.
Okay, and then at the end of that, if the evaluation is good, then they go and get a second year of time to complete, right? And then if that second year goes well, but it's still not completed, you can have an extension to the third, or is there a cutoff, or what happens?
I don't know the answer to that. I can get you the answer. Laura does
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I don't track that. Laura
Oh.
tracks that, just like she tracks who's up for evaluation, she tracks who's up for probationary, non-probationary, who's up for certificate renewal, all that stuff. Maria
Can I
knows
just
that.
say, and actually a lot of it depends on the program, because if the program says you have to do a certain amount of whatever, classwork or observation, and you complete those, you know, in an adequate manner, then the program retains you in the program. If you don't, the administrative program will release you and say, you aren't doing our program.
You have to maintain your status in the program to maintain the waiver.
Right, but like in teachers, it's a given usually that in order, if you have one credential and you're teaching something else, they generally, the state gives you usually 2 years if the district is agreeable to complete those classes. And you can apply for waivers. So I don't know how different the administrative program is, but I was just asking if it's.
I don't know the answer to that
Oh,
question, if it is
well,
different.
that's okay, I'm sorry.
That's a Laura question.
Yeah.
I can get you the answer.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, do we have a motion
I'll make a motion.
to approve?
I'll second.
The motion is to approve?
Correct.
Any public comment? Any further board comment? Okay, move to the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that's 3 to 1, passes. We'll now move on to interview candidates for interim board seat. We have 3 candidates, Robert Kolvig, Frederick Branson, and Paula Nunez. I was thinking that we should have the candidates sit up here at the table so that they're, so that they're visible to the public. Maybe we can move the podium back a little ways so that they're accessible.
And I want to clarify, because Frederick wasn't here when we talked about this, because it was early in the agenda. This position is for now until December of 18.
That came out
go to the restroom, I'll be back.
Okay, we'll take a brief recess. Well, we've got to get everything.
Come on up.
Come on down.
Have a seat, sir. Your choice, your first one here. You're the most agile of the three. You get 1 point for agility.
Be careful there.
Yeah, no thanks. I'm getting scared.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm winning.
Congratulations, that's a good thing. Hold on.
Thank you for participating.
Come on. Close to what you can say.
Watch out.
I know, I'm stuck again, huh?
This is the CIF application.
Chair. Little crutches.
This is, no, this is what
Where
we
do I
voted,
sign?
sorry.
But I'm 7 or 8 weeks out or something, at least I'm on a crutch instead of that goofy walker, yeah.
There's a resolution I had to sign.
We'll see. I've started getting tired of, as much as it's cool at the new hospital, they are so nice. Did you hang out in there for a while?
No, I've been down there.
Oh, whoa, I'm sorry.
That's here.
I'm glad it's going good nonetheless. But, oh, all right, good, good. Well, at home, it's the most entertaining. I had a 4-day spa vacation and it was only like 20 grand a night. But still, jeez. Oh, no, they're ridiculous. But it is nifty. They bring you food every time you turn around and somebody's, are you okay? Yeah, I'm good. Oh, okay, thank you.
It could be short
They're
enough.
just real nifty.
Yeah.
First time I've gone through that, yeah.
And then I'll get signatures after we do that part.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. That's no issue.
You had 2 kids. Now you only have 1 kid.
Oh,
So you
okay.
gotta shrink your body. So
Oh, yeah. Did they put you on dialysis or is your one kid good?
1 kid is good.
Oh, congrats.
I had a diffuse
Oh,
so less than a kid. All the tests are good.
oh, that's kind of hard.
So I was nervous.
Oh, well, good. Your color is good. You look fine.
Yeah, I'm a lot better than I was.
Oh, yeah, tell me.
Did I leave my pen with you?
Excuse me.
You're not getting this
Yeah,
back.
I'm not
I think this is
I think I
mine.
just took Lori's.
No, this is
Can I
mine.
borrow your pen?
Right. Okay, I'm gonna need one.
That's
Do
fine.
we have a?
Hey, Mr. Branson, how are you?
Sheet for
You're not
scoring
falling
candidates?
apart? You can't
We
talk?
don't have a sheet like that.
Okay, we're
Yeah,
gonna
no,
agree.
well, just-
I asked Mark to get one together. So we got the questions here?
The questions are in your binder. So
Yeah.
at the back, behind each
You know,
applicant.
that's right. We're supposed to stand up and say who we are before we talk. Yeah. No, that's exactly true. So are you new to
So
Willits?
you
or
have
you
answer
been
sheets
here?
for each applicant.
Okay, so we can use these as the score
Yes,
sheets.
those, yes, you may.
Okay.
Did you see that, Cynthia?
Oh, that's nice.
There are.
Good girl, so much, yeah.
SDC.
Oh, good. Well, Willits used to be known for their quality special ed. We have the
And I
best
don't know how you
program
wanna
in all of North
roll
Carolina.
the questions.
We'll wait for Lori to come back. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna use these score sheets to put the score
Oh, yeah,
on for each,
yeah.
and then she's gonna have two different pages.
They truly are.
Does John have
Lori,
Oh, wow.
we
John,
don't-
do you
we
want
don't have
your
score sheets.
packet ready?
I asked them to do it. So what we're gonna do for after each person's name, we have a score sheet. You should just put your number here, ranking from one to 10, I think is what we used.
I don't have any of that information. I don't.
Okay, well, we have a big disconnect here.
The way that I thought.
No, the way we did it last time was we did a Borba, we agreed it was a Borba test, Borba
Okay.
method. So each candidate is asked the exact same questions.
Right.
And we score each candidate
Okay.
on a scale of 1 to 10.
All right.
And you're gonna have to calculate that.
All right.
At the end. So
Okay.
in order to do that, we're gonna have to
So if we'll say 1 is the lowest, 10 is the highest.
Right.
Okay, and then you can put
So we
whatever
should,
points.
we should have just had 3 things across, and we could have just,
I'll make it right here on my little spreadsheet.
The scale was 1 through 5.
1 through 5?
That's kind of true, and
All
theoretically
right,
they
that makes more
rotate.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you just put a total next to the box, so.
The question.
Oh, in the presence
Right,
of each
so
other,
if you
yeah,
say,
because they have to.
you know, on Mr. Branson, whatever score you give him, and then
Oh, I don't mind.
I
You
will
guys are
collect
welcome to
these
go
from you
first,
and
and
I'll
I'll just
do up the
pick from
totals.
there.
Okay.
They should.
All right.
But please make sure that on your questions that you put the applicant's name.
All right. So do we have that down? We're gonna rank on a scale of 1 to 5 for each question. Be sure to put the name. And then, I wish I
Do you
did.
still have a question, Chris?
What's that?
Do you still have a question for me?
Well, yeah. Do we have one place where the list of questions are?
I have extras, how about we do that?
Yeah, because, I mean, I apologize,
I
I
got
should have
questions.
organized this.
So
myself.
then you can just read and you won't have to write. Is that what you mean, Chris?
I just want, yeah,
There
just,
you go.
so we have 12 questions.
Fair. You're good with what you? Okay.
And what we do is we go, we'll start with Cynthia, and we'll just move down the line. Each one of us will ask a question. So Cynthia,
Who's going first?
And reading the first question?
yes, and why don't we just go in the order as they're seated? So the first question would be to Mr. Branson, and the same question would then be answered by each of the other 2 candidates.
You got it. Everybody understand? Okay. Our first question says, please tell us your life story. Born and raised, kids in Willits, history with Willits.
Native Californian, born in Riverside, raised in Alameda, attended school in Alameda. Everything in between is a jumble. I've taken I've done student teaching with UC Riverside, so I do have some teaching background. But I've been corporate for the last 16 years. I have no vested interest in the board teacher community, although I do understand the roles. I am currently retired. I just retired in January. I have been a corporate trainer for AT&T for the last 16 years, training worldwide around communication skills, difficult interactions, all that kind of stuff. So I've done that for quite a while. I have an MA in political theory and MBA in technology management that I've used with managers, mostly domestically, with some Mexico, India, Hong Kong, and military background. So I get 5 points for that. I'm a member of the local American Legion Post. I'm also the Area 1 VP for the American Legion Riders. So if you see me on a bright blue motorcycle, that is me. I've got a leadership position on a local church. See, how much life story do you want? I got 3 kids, 11 grandkids. I'm broke all the time. That's just being retired. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you. Cynthia, would you repeat the question for the next candidate?
Okay. Please tell us your life story, born and raised, kids in Willits, history with Willits.
Born in Petaluma, raised in Willits, for the most part. Attended junior high school and high school here, Willits High School graduate. Married, 3 children. All 3 children have been Willits High graduates. Bulk of my life has been involved in education. 2 of my 3 children are involved in education. I'm pretty excited about their career choice. Was fortunate to leave Willits for a little while. When I graduated from high school, I got a scholarship to Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. So I went to Springfield, Ohio, and got a bachelor's degree in business administration and a secondary teaching credential. Did my student teaching there, and got a secondary credential in business education. one thing at that time with business education is you weren't considered a good candidate for a teaching job unless you went out and got some business experience. So I worked for 2 years at the Pacific Telephone in San Francisco in the marketing division, and then I switched and wanted some office and computer experience. So I worked for State Farm Insurance in the regional office in Santa Rosa for about 2 years, and then I went on to teaching, my first teaching assignment down in Corona, Riverside, and then Susanville, and then I was lucky enough to find out about an opening in Willits, and I journeyed back to Willits, and was a business teacher, football coach, and wrestling coach at Willits, and then finished my master's degree from Chico State University in public administration. Then I reached a point where I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I asked different people what they thought I'd be good at, and most of them said you should be a counselor. Switch from teaching to be a counselor, so I took them up on it and went to University of San Francisco, and I got a second master's degree in counseling psychology and counseling credential, pupil personnel services credential, so secondary teaching credential and pupil personnel services credential. And I liked going back to school so much that I decided to stay, and I earned a doctorate from the University of San Francisco in organizational leadership. My dissertation, which was pretty exciting for me to do, I focused on counseling leadership in rural and non-rural schools and the comparison there. And with that, I went to all of the rural schools in this area and spent a day or two with the counselors and learned a lot about the different small schools. So that's, if you'd call me something, I'd be a small school specialist. So I did all of that, and all of a sudden 30 years had gone by, or 30-something, and so I retired from Willits High School in 2010. Along the way, I got involved with the University of California, Berkeley, and working on summer programs, transitioning, which was something we talked about earlier tonight, transitioning 8th grade students to 9th grade to ensure more success in the 9th grade. And so I started one of the first, actually the first summer algebra academy in Northern California. And there was one in Ukiah and one in Willits. We started at the same time, and I got to point to how Ukiah was doing, how Willits was doing it. In fact, Stevie was in our program, first summer program in 2004. So I had University of California copy my model, and so I had to do some presentations on that model. And the success of that was we enabled the 8th grade students to volunteer to come to summer school for 3 weeks just prior to high school beginning. And the different programs I implemented there were to increase their career awareness, college readiness, and awareness of colleges. So there's lots of different things I can talk about that, but that was a big success while it was funded, and I got some funding through the University of California. That motivated me to learn more about the University of California, so I went to work for University of California in the Office of Admissions as an application reader. So I read millions and millions of words of essays, and so I learned what went well with a good, what we would call a good college application. So I used that knowledge to start a business helping students, mostly low income and mostly from small rural schools, helping students apply to college and get scholarships. On my website I looked at the other day, I think I had 100 different college acceptances from the groups that I worked with. And one of the peaks was one of my students got the Gates Millennium Scholarship, which is really worth about $500,000 because Bill Gates will pay all the way through your doctorate degree. So I was working with a low-income student and he got that scholarship. And should be a junior at Davis right now. So I have lots of successes that really motivates me to get involved in education, and that's why I'm here. That's enough. I could talk forever, but it's.
Thank you. Okay, Paula, here's the question again. Please tell us your life story. Born and raised, kids in Willits, history with Willits.
I was born and raised in Fresno, California, and I stayed there till I was about 26. I went to school at Fresno State, and I started teaching in Fresno. I came up here, and I started to work here. I did long-term sub jobs for a couple of years first, and then I got contracted with this district, and I stayed here until just last June. Okay, not the last month, but June of 2016. I have a husband who works in the district, and I have 2 daughters who went to school through here. One of them just got her master's degree in social work this past May, and the other one got her teaching credential and has worked in the district last year and will work this year in the district coming year. Originally, you know, when I started here, it was the year, well, half sort of the year. I came up in like March or something, but then come June, Dr. Kirkpatrick became the superintendent. He and I worked on bringing in bilingual education to the school district, and so we did that with a couple of other teachers, and then the following year, we brought in migrant ed summer school programs, where I was the site administrator as well as a teacher for, at the beginning, 6 weeks for 6 hours a day, and then after that, down to, I did that for like 16 years, and that was real good. It was out of Santa Rosa, and it ended up boiling down to like 4 weeks and 4 hours a day. And now, just to connect it, it sort of melted into Nuestra Alianza, and that program is going on, but Migrant Ed mostly does a lot of funding and testing, and Nuestra Alianza doesn't have to follow all the academic rules that we followed. But it was real exciting. It's because of that that I've done every single job in this district that exists except being superintendent or a bus driver. So I know at least a little about all of the other positions, and I know a whole lot about some of them. The other thing that has gone on is that, I don't know, I've been living in Willits for nearly 40 years, and I don't know, I generally talk nonstop. This sort of amazes me that all of a sudden I'm done. But I've been coming to board meetings when I first started working here back in 78 or 9 when Chris started here. We even used to butt heads then, did you know? But still. And then I took about 10 years off when my girls were little, and you know, no one wanted to hear them cry in the cafeteria over there while you guys had meetings. And my husband always works nights and I always work days. And then since I've been back, it's been like 25 or so years that I seldom miss a board meeting. And so that's why I figured it might be nifty to sit on your side of the table instead of mine.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to Alex. You have the second question.
Mr. Branson, please describe your interest in being trustee for Willits Unified School District, your experience with the district, and any specific area of board work that's particularly interested you, is of particular interest to you. For example, special education, school law, finance, curriculum.
The interest for a trustee position for the Willits School Board is that, first off, the school board position is a community service position. That's why it's elected. It's the oversight. And overall, it supposed to provide the vision for how the schools are run. Now, when you look at the way the schools are laid out, you've got 5 high schools in Willits, including the 2 charter schools that are still drawing funds and students away. You've got a lot of opportunity. I mean, I'm not saying that as a negative thing, but the purpose of the charter schools is to explore things in smaller classes. I'd like to see how that's implemented in your school district. So your 5 high schools are Levita, which is technically a K-12, Willits Charter School, which is also a high school, New Horizons, which I can't find much information on, Willits High School, and Sanhedrin, which is transitioning, so there's not a lot of information on that right now. So as I look at this, I'm interested in the way Willits is approaching the issues around ADA, around the funding, because you've got some serious fluctuations over the last few years in attendance. How does that impact it? How does the board provide direction and insight to the superintendent to best address the distribution of funds in a school district that is, and it's in flux, it's certainly dynamic would be a positive term for it. And so when you look at the position of trustee, as a member of the community, because even though I've now lived here long, my son's lived here for 5 years, the schools are the linkage between where we've been and where we're going. And we all have a vested interest in the success of our schools. So certainly the board's position is to look at successes, opportunities, growth, and also some of the challenges that not just this school district is facing, but other ones are. And that's where I would like to take a position on that. My interest is in, especially the high school, and when you were talking about the transition from 8th to 9th grade, there's also another transition for me that's important, is the 9th to 12th grades. How do you transfer leadership from teacher to student in those 4 years? Because up until then, everything is primary source. Everything is, basically chain link fence, learn a bunch of stuff. But how can the students take the lead in some of this? And that's where my interest is as you start looking at it. I like the AVID program. I like the concept of AVID. But a lot of AVID, after talking to some of the students here and the way it's implemented in other areas, a lot of the AVID is top-down run. And there's more opportunity for the students to be involved in that, and that's what I'd like to focus on. So, again, short. That's my focus.
Mr. Coldick, please describe your interest in being a trustee for Willits Unified School District, your experience with Willits Unified School District, and any specific area of board work that is of particular interest to you, for example, special education, school law, finance, or curriculum.
Well, the why I would like to be on the board is I'd like to be an effective team member that helps to preserve what we have and improve on the quality of our school system. I believe we should all strive to provide a healthy and happy and safe environment for our children. I think that's first and foremost. And along with that goal, we should provide an educational environment that provides quality options for all of our students. And then you could have a long laundry list of all the different topics, art, music, drama, career and technical education, college prep, science, math, and so on. I think all of those are equally important, and that we want to provide an opportunity for students to explore and find their niche or find their passion, and then help them to promote that passion. I've always said that, at Willits, I've been here, I was an employee for over 30 years and a student here for 7. When I see students walking around the campuses, I always say there's a state championship level student right here out in the quad. They just don't know it yet because they haven't made that connection with the teacher to find their passion to work hard enough to rise to a high level and in any of those subjects. And so my view of education is that we should help students find that passion, and I'm very adamant about that. I talked earlier about the freshman transition. I think that that's the first step in the transition to graduating from high school as a 9th grader to 12th grader in those 4 years, to help the student transfer from middle school and then develop a focus. And there's lots of different things that can be implemented to ensure student success. It's very disheartening to hear statistics that Mark mentioned earlier, the number of students that start as freshmen and then disappear. And so I'm really worried about that through all the grades. So, my focus in discussion generally ends up being in high school, because I've been there more than any other spot. But I have been a middle school vice principal, and I've been a acting principal and an acting superintendent, and as well as a teacher and a coach. And the atmosphere of the school really, really is important. And so the attitude of the students through improving their transition and their goals, and finding the right staff. We talked a lot about credentials, not fully credentialed people, but finding people that have the passion to pass that on to the students. I think that's very important. Staffing and finding the right people to help our children. So I think I answered all three parts. Did I?
Thank you. Mrs. Nunez, please describe your interest in being a trustee for Willis Unified School District, your experience with Willis Unified School District, and any specific area of board work that's of particular interest to you, for example, special education, school law, finance, curriculum.
Okay, I'm interested in being a trustee, kind of like I said, because I've been so involved for so long, I think it would make sense. I do believe strongly in the board being the place where it is a public meeting concerning public issues. I believe strongly that it needs to be transparent and open, and I think that I can contribute to those things or encourage them to continue. I also, I've been on a number of boards in a number of ways, and so I'm pretty sure I know how a procedure should run. I'm really good at homework, you know, as far as things that I believe in. When I hear something different than what I understand to be the way things are supposed to be, it's fortunately, it has been convenient for me to look into who I need to talk to and how many people I need to talk to come to the information that gives me what is the true story about what I'm interested in. I've always been very, very interested in budgets. Money just fascinates and entertains me considerably, and I just have been with the Willits Teachers Association starting the third year I was a teacher here. I've been involved in the union especially in their negotiations, and have been a lead negotiator for, I don't know, probably about 20 years, off and on, in particular the last 10 or 12. And so I understand the budget, and I do understand also that excuse me, priorities are often different given your background. And I also think that that's a good thing, because depending upon what needs taken care of right away or in the future, you look at the money, you make sure that it is as transparently clear as possible, and then you deal with it, you know. And I think that it's mandatory for members of the board to understand the budget. That's a big thrust of what happens in a school district. I started in this district dealing with special ed. It was a real big deal to me. I ran into a superintendent, however, who worked here and said that I needed to pick either bilingual education or special education. I certainly couldn't do both. And at that time, I switched over to bilingual ed and just stuck with it for a while. Those are very interesting to me. I believe that every single child has their opportunity, and that truthfully, between the board and the teachers, and certainly the administration's support, those things can happen. I believe strongly that the board makes policies, and one thing that I think would be nice is that those policies get made clear to all of the staff, so that then all staff can follow directions and one way or another learn how to meet the needs of all of our students. Sometimes it just takes the smallest thing to connect with the kids so that the rest of the things fall into place. I don't know what else you want, except that, yeah, that's why I want to be a board member, and that's what's special to me.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the third question. It's my privilege to ask that, Mr. Branson. The role of trustee is evolved. Yes.
Doesn't it make sense to start with like Mr. Colvig next?
We agreed that procedure that we just, you know, so we're not going to change the procedure in midstream.
Oh, so he's going to get the first question every time. And
so he doesn't get as much time to think about his answer. He's always Johnny on the spot, and everybody else is getting more time.
Well, we're not going to change in midstream. if somebody wanted to make that point, they should have raised it before
I
we
believe
started.
in him though. I think he'll do well.
All right.
My vote, sir.
Mr. Branson, the job of trustee is a volunteer job. Please describe any volunteer hours or projects that you have worked on for our schools or for children in general.
As far as schools and children, I have worked with our church organization extensively over the last million years. I know I don't look that old, probably not more than 500,000, but in our church organization, we do a lot of volunteer effort with youth. So we do a lot of that. I'm working right now with the American Legion Riders, with our American Legion Post, trying to put together with the Willits Wild Bunch so we can participate with them around their toy run. The riders, our riders group is out of Fort Bragg, but I've worked with them as well. As far as the schools go, I work with my grandson for some of his sports activities. I work with my granddaughter and my other grandson, the younger one, with some of the intramural sports, again, down in Ukiah, but still it's working with youth. As far as formal hours, most of my volunteer work right now is with veterans, so not extensive amount with youth, but extensive amount of volunteer work.
Thank you. Mr. Colby? Let me
So-
just repeat the question. It's the job of trustee is a volunteer job. Please describe any volunteer hours or projects that you would have worked on for our schools, that you have worked on for our schools or for children in general.
I'm a member of the Willits High School Site Council. I'm a member of the Friends of Mendocino County, Mendocino College North Campus, which plans activities for students to promote attendance and success at the North County campus. Most importantly, I've worked on a volunteer basis for students that are low income that need help applying to college and looking for scholarships. And every year I work with from 2 to 5 students, maybe more, and help them through that process. And most of the students that I've worked with have ended up, you're not going to believe the number, but I'll tell you, most of them ended up with $100,000 scholarships. And so I'm quite proud of that, and I do that every year. I consider that my volunteering and paying back. I had a football coach in high school that helped me find my way to college, and I'm trying to pay that back. And so I could give you a long list of successes there. And usually that whole process per student takes 40 to 50 hours.
Okay, thank you. Paula, I'm just going to repeat the question. Yes? Trustee is a volunteer job. Please describe any volunteer hours or projects that you have worked on for our schools or for children in general.
I've worked in the district for 38 or 39 years, and a lot of those hours are volunteer, as we all know. Anyway, and then in addition to that, I have worked a lot with Hispanic groups, part of them through the church and part of them just in general. When I did summer schools, you put in a part of the administrative position is to visit with all of the families and make sure everybody's getting the education or the assistance, the supplies, whatever that they need. And so certainly I've done all of that. I've been really involved when my girls went to school, junior high and high school, with the soccer teams and the basketball teams, because those are the sports that they chose. Before the girls, I used to go to the softball and baseball little league teams because that's the sport I liked. But they didn't choose that, so we did basketball and soccer. But anyway, and then when Mr. Dunst was here, I was very involved in the music program, the instrumental, and I guess chorus. I didn't deal much with them, but the instruments and all, we came and petitioned the board for money and did fundraisers and things like that. Those were volunteer hours. And for the football games, when the girls used to have to play in the evening, you know, I'd work the concession stand or do something constructive instead of sit on the bleachers. And I don't know, it seems like I'm always volunteering for something. I used to tutor, but that was usually my own students. The last year, I tutored 4 kids twice a week and then down to once a week, just because I knew them and they were having, you know, it's difficult sometimes when both parents work to come home and help your kids do whatever it is that they're stuck on. And math and reading are pretty entertaining, so I would take care of that, you know, and that wasn't bad. I used to do voting registration and those kinds of civic things, just because I believe in them. I'm a real firm believer in, if you can, you need to help as many and as often as you can, because you're in the system, you're lucky enough to not need that support at this time, so your spare time needs to go out and share it, you know, and pretty much I sort of do that. As I've gotten older, like this past year, I didn't do much at all except tutor, but that's the way it goes. I had to pretend I was retired, and that was real fun. Then that's what I know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now we'll move on to Lori.
Mr. Branson, what do you see as major problems affecting quality education, and how does one measure academic success of our students? Please give examples of how you can keep the board focused on improving student achievement.
Well, there's a couple of things that come up. As far as teachers go, teachers are certainly central to the success of the student. And the discussion earlier around the interim credentials, a teacher coming in, usually interim credentials indicates a more junior teacher, usually, not always. But that also brings in different lifeblood into an organization, whether it's outside a school district or in a school district. So you have that opportunity. I believe that involvement in the students is the most important path to success. To measure success, certainly standardized tests are what we fall back on. Not always the best indication, because there are plenty of students who suffer test anxiety. Plenty of adults who suffer test anxiety. But I would think that the most indicative measure of success for a student is, what do they do in their last year of high school? What are their plans when they leave here? And it doesn't mean college, it doesn't mean technical school. Those are certainly what a lot of instructors look at. A lot of trainers, a lot of boards, a lot of the research goes into identifying the students who have gone on to success, meaning that they've gone on to college. Well, there's a lot of other measures, and part of that is going to be, what plans do they have and how well can they plan a future outside of high school? Bruce Springsteen sang about glory days. Their 12th year should not be their glory days. It should be considerably after that, and yet we have a lot of youth who are starting to find that their glory days were going back. And there's movies about that, but that's not relevant. What is relevant is, are the kids able to make plans when they come out? Are they able to effectively transmit those? Is there a final essay that says, what do I plan to do? Not that they would have to follow it, and we're certainly not going to go after them and say, how are you doing on the checklist? But could they put together a real plan in their senior year of, what do I see in my next year, my next 5 years? Something that says that I've actually given thought to where I'm going. And for me, that's the biggest amount of success that you can get. Because when they come out of here, and I believe the phrase earlier was, we want to make school a safe place. And there's 2 paths on board research. One of those says, make education a safe place. And I may not entirely go down that path. I think that school by the 11th grade should be a place that challenges students to think, should make it a place where they can express ideas that may be out of the norm or may be controversial, but are open to discussion, and that's what constitutes an effective school. And so when you see it come up, and it's the same thing anytime you give kids a choice, when they're young, choices are limited. What color clothes do you want to wear today, because you're going to wear clothes? Up to, as they get older, you start making choices. School should be the same way. How much input do they have? How much discussion can they have? How involved can they be in deliberating their future and expressing their beliefs, their thoughts, their understanding of what the world looks like? And for me, it would be that final essay about what are my plans for 1 year and 5 years? Not that they're going to follow it, but to make them think about it. For me, that's the biggest success. Is they can do that. If not, then we need to go back and look at what we've done for the last 12 years.
Thank you. Mr. Colvig, what do you see as the major problems affecting quality education, and how does one measure academic success of our students? Please give examples of how you can keep the board focused on improving student achievement.
First and foremost, I think we should want our goal to be happy and healthy students that want to come to school. So attendance might be a big factor on something we should follow up on all the time. As far as academic progress is concerned, if that's a measurement, then periodic benchmark testing with accommodations, a testing environment that works for that particular student. Not everybody's a pencil and a put the dot type of a test taker, so we need to make sure that we have some alternative testing methods to assess student progress. So those are the things that I think are the most important, is do they want to come to school? And attendance should tell us that. And if they're not coming to school, what do we need to do as a district to make sure that that happens? Because you can't be successful in school if you're not there. And then overall, we have the goals for the district that are on the board agenda and so on. But reading, writing, thinking, speaking critically, to me, those are the most important things that should happen so that they can make that transition from high school, from kindergarten or pre-kindergarten through middle school to high school to adulthood. Are they going to be happy and productive citizens? And in what arena? And it's very exciting, having been here for as many years, to see students. First thing I have to ask them is, how old are you now? Because I never, they seem young to me, but some of them are 50 already. And how life has been for them, and how are they happy? And so that to me is feedback that I think is fantastic. Yeah, and I remember when you kicked me out of class because I wasn't doing what you wanted me to do. Those are the kind of things. Actual number measurements, then we definitely need some test scores, we need attendance records, and then we need to periodically set goals and objectives for what we see as areas for improvement, and agree on what is the area of improvement, and then map out a plan to work toward improvement, and then have a measurement to find out if it actually did happen.
Thank you, Mr. Colvig. Mrs. Nunez, what do you see as major problems affecting quality education, and how does one measure academic success of our students? Please give examples of how you can keep the board focused on improving student achievement.
Okay, well, this is where it's a real advantage to be last, and thank you, gentlemen, because I agree with those guys, both of them, especially the attendance part. I have some concerns about attendance when children are elementary age, K2, K4 maybe. You really have to talk to their families if they're not coming to school. But after about 5th or especially 6th, 7th grade, they can usually walk themselves or get up and get themselves to a bus. And high school, that would be, to me, the biggest deal. Are they attending? Because 9 times out of 10, they're able to take themselves. So if our attendance is high, then I really think that's a real good indicator that, yes, they come to school, they feel safe, they're interested in what they're learning. They like their social circle, and they are here, and that I 100% believe if you're not here, a teacher cannot be held accountable for teaching you anything. I mean, you need to show up, and it's handy when you're paying attention because then you might absorb some information. That to me is the biggest problem, and then the second problem that I find in education is that often there's kind of this huge gap between what people think they're supposed to be doing and what somebody else thinks they're supposed to be doing, and when it's not that I like this example, but if you put it on a ladder and you have the administration on the top of the ladder and the teachers on the next rung, then there needs to be a good solid understanding of this is what we expect from you, and then the teachers need to take the student, or not just teachers, I should call them all staff because plenty of classified staff have as much interaction as do certificated. But then that information needs to be sent on to the kids. For a while in Willits, we had a program that required that teachers would explain to students, this is what we're learning today, this is how we're going to learn it, and at the end we'll do a little exit test and see if you were successful. Worked really well for a while. You'd tell people what you want them to know, you'd teach it to them, they're already focused, and then they learn it generally, they retain it generally, and then they are successful and go on. And a week later you can ask them, do you remember when you did this or that? And they'll go yes, and they'll be able to explain it. For me, that's success. I've never been a big proponent of a lot of standardized testing because of precisely the reasons of testing nervousness. However, you have to have some sort of standardized test, otherwise you can't judge how well this district does compared to other districts, our economic group compared to other economic groups, our own kids compared to themselves from the year before to the next year. And that's one part of testing I think we need to pay a little more attention to, is that if you're in the first grade and you test out this way, do you test in the same percentiles when you get to the second or the third or the fourth, as opposed to this group of first graders tested here, next group of first graders, okay, they tested over here. These are not the same kids, and so the testing results are not quite as accurate in telling you how students are doing as they might be. I like authentic portfolios, so to speak, where a kid, what happens is you have a writing sample and you put that in a little file, and the following year you have another writing sample and you compare the growth. Okay, those are real handy. They're real, and they take a little time to look at. We do a lot of that in this district already, or well, we used to that I knew about, and probably that's a supplement to standardized testing that would be a good thing. Major successes, I think, show up when a percentage of our students, because not all students need to be college bound, but a percentage of our students go on to college. But I think it's a misunderstanding when people say, oh, out of my 100 graduates, 50 of them started college, yay for them. That is a yay, but it's not near as important as whether or not those same 50 finished college. Okay, it's easy to start. A lot of colleges around here you can go to, but to go ahead and follow all the way through and get your full, complete, whatever it is you want is a big deal, and that's where we ought to look. And most kids that I've seen around love to come back to Willits if they're from Willits and say, hey, guess what, did you know I just got this, this, or that? And their teachers go, wow, well, I knew you could, and that's a big deal. It's something that would show us, are we successful in this system or aren't we in this school district? And I think that you'll find that there's a good at least 25% that I haven't done any studies except people that I know. And yeah, they went to school, they finished school, they're real proud of themselves. Lots of them like to come back to where they grew up and give part of what they got here back to here. At least what I've noticed in 40 years is we have a lot of people who believe strongly in giving back to their community. For my way of thinking, that's one of the biggest successes anybody could have from any town. It keeps it alive, it keeps it growing. And then how do you keep the board focused? On student achievement, you read the results, you get a report. Focused in general, that's an issue for me, so I'll do whatever, I guess bang the gavel once in a while and say, pay attention, we're on this sentence. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, Cynthia.
Okay, our fifth question is, okay, as a new board member, what would be your top 3 priorities for the district?
top three priorities for me going through and looking at where we are. And I may not have found them, they're not easy to find. First thing I'd like to see is mission statement for the schools in the district. The charter schools have beautiful mission statements written up. Whether they follow them or not is a whole other issue, but they have easily identifiable mission statements, visions for where they want the school to go. And in your letter, you put out some directions you wanted to go. But without a mission statement, it's hard for the teachers to align. It becomes easier with a mission statement to determine what the teacher's supposed to be doing to move toward a common goal. And that would be the first thing I'd look at. The second thing I would look at is how do we transfer some of the responsibility, especially, again, the AVIC program, a national program that seems to be very successful and implemented, and how do we transfer some of that responsibility over to the students? And in doing so, also pad their resumes so that they have leadership positions on their resumes when they move forward. The AVID program seems to have it seems to be begging the question of how can we turn this over to more students rather than top down, make it a partnership of the 9th, 10th grade, 11th, and 12th led by the students, and it helps their resumes on, you get more of a curriculum vitae rather than just a resume to put into a college or anything else. And I'd like to see us partner a little bit more with the community college around what are some of the things they can do. And again, it doesn't have to be just the high achievers. I know it's one thing about AVID is it seems to be focused on the high achievers, people who are identified as high achievers. And so you're leaving out the kids that are, hesitate to use the word, but having been one for many years, slackers in the back of the class, who do grow up to do good things. How do we identify them and make them feel that they're part of a program so that they can take ownership of where they're going? I mean, if AVID is all about achievement via individual determination, how do you get the kids to buy into that rather than being told? And again, I would never impose on a teacher's classroom to tell them whether you're training right or not. That's your job to make sure that they're being monitored effectively. But certainly, if your students, and I disagree to some extent, it's small bit with you, about attendance. I think kids attend because it's easier than fighting. When your ADA is at a high percentage, but it's a rotating group of kids, so when you've got an issue, you can have decent attendance and still not have impact. How do we make sure we're getting impact? And that's why I'd like to see AVID expanded out and maybe made more relevant to a broader base of students, because the program looks great. I went out and looked it up because I've heard about it, but the school determines what schools are going to look at. And I've heard Davis, Stanford's nice. I've taken my grandkids down there. We went down to UCLA. I showed them that school. Odds of him going to UCLA and Stanford have dropped precipitously in his junior year. But the purpose is to give them a focus. And that's where I would go. So those are my 3 areas.
Thank you. Okay, as a new board member, what would be your top 3 priorities for the district?
Well, I could answer it very quickly. I would want to know, and I'll say attendance again. What's the attendance, and is it improving, and what steps are being made to make sure that it's improving? I would want to know about benchmark testing in mathematics at all grade levels. And when I say testing, I don't necessarily mean standardized testing, but some measurement to see if we are making the progress that we want to in mathematics, and the same thing with language arts. So I just said measure attendance and mathematics progress and language arts. And so that's my simple answer. I'll stay with that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, as a new board member, what would be your top 3 priorities for the district?
Well, I know that y'all remember that No Child Left Behind rule that I didn't agree wholeheartedly with, but there were two sections in there that I thought were good. And one was that all people working in the district needed to have the proper credentials or the proper skill sets for what they were teaching. And I believe very strongly in that. And I also believe that if there are teachers that don't have the proper skills necessary, that the administrator needs to be held accountable for making sure those teachers get whatever training or support they need. So that would be my biggest deal. The second one I believe real strongly in is the morale for the district. Teachers, any employees, not just teachers is what I mean to say, but the administration level, all the classified positions, the morale needs to be high. You need to feel like you're doing the best you can possibly do and it's appreciated. And that the person next to you is also doing the very best they can do, because if you and I are doing the same job, getting the same pay, and I'm really putting out and you're gone 2 hours out of your shift, well then it's difficult for my morale to stay high. And if I think that my class load is skewed compared to my neighbor's class load, it's difficult for my morale to stay high. And if I think that I have 3 jobs to do as an administrator and you only have 1, it's difficult for my morale to stay high. So what I'd like to really focus on is that everyone is kind of trained to do the very best that they can and then do that. And that the evaluations for that are sincere, that it's concreted, kind of like the teacher evaluation form usually requires direct observation and concrete examples of what really happened. And I'd sort of like to see something similar to that spread out for everyone so that everyone can feel, yes, I've accomplished, I feel really good about me for putting my best foot forward, and everybody's aware of how best that foot was, okay? And then the last thing that is sort of important, our district's going through some changes. We have a lot of new teachers and new personnel coming into play. I truly agree that they all need in-servicing. Sometimes even the ones who have been here 20 years need to go through those professional developments, okay? And so I really think that there should be a high priority to that, especially when people are new. When they've been here 10 or 15 years, they can start seeing how the cycle just keeps going, and it's the same thing that they taught you 8 years ago. It's just got different buzzwords and is a new $2,000 bill for the district. But when people are all pretty new, I really find it very important for everyone to be in-serviced, or professionally developed is the word that we use here, and for all groups of people who work. Thank you.
Okay, Alex, you've got the next set of questions.
Mr. Branson, what budget philosophies might you have?
Looking at your budget, again, going back and looking at the ADA, and looking at the LCFF, going through and looking at all the stuff you've got going on, you've got a $20 million budget roughly for all the schools. And as I was looking over the last couple of years, it's prioritization, because you've got teacher issues. Sure, you've got to hire new teachers. You also pay less than the districts around you. And that, going back to what you had brought up earlier, part of the reason for some of the difficulty in identifying credentialed teachers up front is if there's 2 positions open and one pays $5,000 more a year than the other one, then we go there. So it's prioritization. What do we need to do? In the buildings, if you look around, and we saw this happen in Antioch where I was at, it's maintain a reserve so you can handle the stuff that comes up important, capital expenditures as well as expenses. Your expenses, you have a high level of expense on your budget, but you also have a lot of capital outlay that you've got to take care of. And you said you were site supervisor. You're familiar with what goes on, or site council. You know what's going on with some of the buildings, so it's looking at the budget and recognizing that there has to be something held in reserve. And you have a ton of emergencies, well, not a ton, not that much. Only what I see in the newspaper, because I'm fairly recent. having retired recently. It's about holding enough money back and not giving it back. That's where business comes in handy on that. The recognition that you cannot plan for everything that comes up. So budget philosophy is, I can't say hold back 20%, that's Pareto principle. But I would say my budget philosophy is to go through and look and prioritize based on what you know, because as a new board member, I've not been here that long. You've been here, what's the phrase? For freaking ever, that's it. You know the problems. And so it's not about jumping in and saying, throw money at this issue. It's listening, learning, and then coming back and then identifying priorities after spending time talking to the administration to find out what they see their priorities as, and then see how that aligns up with the community opportunity to fund what's out here. Because sometimes, we see this in the business world a lot, sometimes the desires of the people who are running the business, superintendent, don't always match the ability to pay the share owners, and that's who we represent as the taxpayer, the community.
Okay. Mr. Colvig, what budget philosophies might you have?
Don't spend more than you're gonna bring in. You've got to have a budget, and that's probably the testiest part of the whole process, because everybody has their own priority, what they believe in that is going to be of value to the students and staff within the district. And so reaching a consensus on what that priority might be is probably the most difficult thing that is done. And so anything we can do as board members to help reach a consensus, and we got a budget and something's gonna have to get cut if we're gonna add something else. And so how are we gonna do that? You've gotta have a mutual agreement, a teamwork to say, okay, this is what we agree on. Not everybody will like it, but if the majority of people say this is where we think we should be spending our money, then you probably have to go with that with a vote. And so budget, be budget conscious all the time, and then always try and reach a consensus on our priorities.
Thank you. Ms. Nunes, what budget philosophies might you have?
Well, like I said earlier, I believe really strongly in priorities. Actually, I'm sort of a conservative budget person just because I believe strongly in you don't spend more than you make. That would be nonsense. I also believe, though, that you really shouldn't stash back too much money, in the sense that things that need to be taken care of need to be taken care of. And if you're more concerned with your reserve being at 10% or whatever, instead of the state mandated 3% or really 1% you can get permission for, then I really think that you're just holding money back that's not right. When there are needs present, it's always good to have a savings account, but not at the expense of things that need to be taken care of, not at the expense of your students, not at the expense of your sites, and certainly not at the expense of the people who are working within the district with you. There's one thing about a budget that I really do like that this district is starting to really push, and I really think that's due to the board already so far, and so I'd like to continue this. And that is that, you get a preliminary budget and you say, oh, okay, it's gonna cost me this much money to do this. Well, that's probably true, except that lately our district has taken a lot of interest in, okay, it was gonna cost me $20 to do this, it only cost $15. Yay, there's $5 over here, and I'm gonna add that with the rest of my little fives, and look, I can do something else. Instead of just saying, well, it was gonna cost 20, and it probably did, and you never pay attention to whatever ended up saved at the end of the year. And so, I really believe strongly in unaudited actuals because they tell you the real truth, and then you know exactly where you stand. And since we all know the rule that whatever the attendance is for the current year, you either get that much money or the money from the year before, whichever was higher. I think you have a really good, strong base to make your budgets on. I think you have a lot of really good past history of what things costed. Throw in a couple of percent because there are always increases. And then I think that budgets should just be a part of a, you know, one of those spreadsheets or whatever. And I must say that Nikki in truth did really well last time, and that's who I'd rely a lot on for my budget philosophying for now. It's just all the extra. I do want to see a priority. Naturally, we have to have consensus or agreement. But then I think it's important to remember that everyone needs their cut. We don't need to put a whole bunch of money in a reserve and then just leave it there in case there's a disaster. If the disaster is that big, the state will come in and bail us out. They have to, you know, and that's why that happens. I really do believe that.
Okay. It's my turn. Mr. Branson,
Which question number is this?
this is question number 7. What type of working relationship would you like to see between the board, the superintendent, and employee organizations? And please give examples of how you can facilitate or improve these relationships.
Okay. First off, the board has to be at least in agreement, and I like that term agreement. Consensus doesn't have to exist, but agreement does, that the direction we're going counts. So the board has to have at least a majority heading down a path. So working with the superintendent, it's about developing an effective mission for where we want the school district to go, and then breaking it down with the superintendent, whoever that is. And Mr. Westenberg, that's you, but point out what's the vision for the way the schools are going. Like right now, you've got the transition for Sanhedrin from a continuation school to alternative, and I believe the intent is to make it more of a vocational school with fewer hours, fewer credits required, is what it said in the paper. I don't always believe that, but when you look at where the schools are going, having that opportunity to sit down and hammer out from the board with the superintendent, what is the direction we're going? How do you define the direction? Because you've got a number of different schools within the district that have different functions, different purposes, and how well do they work together to determine most effective application of resources? So when you look at something like Sherwood, which is a smaller school that has a different mission, different vision, what's effective there and what's not? And how do we move away from the things that we've always done because we've always done them? How do we look for opportunities to build those up? And you look at the charter schools in Willits, they have some really high things, some really low things, but what are the things that are working for them, and is there communication? I'd like to see the board determine how the vision fits the school district on interaction, and how do we make sure that we all are going down the right path. One of the problems that I see in a lot of the business world is that leadership has great ideas, great vision, great intentions, but when you ask the person at the bottom, the person who's actually doing the work, they have no idea what they're supposed to be doing. They go into the classroom and they hit the Common Core, whatever the definition of Common Core is this year, but they don't see where it fits in to what's going on in the overall school, and I think that's where it becomes critical. And again, it goes back to, I can't find it. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I haven't been able to find on any of the websites around the Willits schools. And for me, that's one of the first things to work with the superintendent, and then to work with the CSEA and the site CTA.
WTA and CSEA.
WTA, which is the teachers union side, but working with them to have a good understanding of how that fits into the mission, and is there a disjunction, a dysfunction between sometimes the vision of what the leadership wants and what the people can do or are willing to do contractually. And I think contractual language is important. So when I look at this, for me, it's important, first off, to have a clear understanding across here of what do you see as the vision. As a new board member, I certainly wouldn't expect expect to come in and start setting policy up front, but I would really wanna know, what have you seen for the vision for the schools? What's the vision here for the different schools within the district? How do you see those differentiated? And also, what do you see as the common line between those? And then how does that match the Willits Teachers Association and the CSEA for the certificated employees? I have to pull this out because it's different language in my world, but it's about making sure that everything matches up and that the people at the bottom, the people who are doing the work, have a clear understanding of why they're doing what they're doing. Because we find that when there is not a clear understanding of high expectations, when people are just doing what they can to get by, no matter how high the expectations are here, if people are just trying to get by down here, then you find disjointed effort. And it goes back to what you had brought up earlier, that if I'm doing 3 times the work of the person next to me or making the same pay, it's hard for morale to stay up. And why is one person feeling that compulsion to do it? So that's where I see it.
Thank you. Mr. Colvig, what type of working relationship would you like to see between the board, the superintendent, and employee organizations? Please give examples of how you can facilitate or improve these relationships.
Well, as a new board member, naturally I'd like to see everybody happy. I think in order for me to answer that question, I'd have to say that if I was a new board member, I'd have to do a lot of listening. And listening to other board members, and then after a lot of listening, I think I could answer that question better. But naturally, we'd like to get along with everybody, but you have limited resources, and you have to have a policy on how to allocate those resources, and the task is trying to keep everybody happy with how those decisions have been made. And so, again, I would say that as a new board member, I'd want to do a lot of listening before I said anything else beyond that.
Thank you. Ms. Nunez, same question. What type of working relationships would you like to see between the board, the superintendent, and employee organizations? And please give examples of how you can facilitate or improve these relationships.
Well, I also agree that we all need to be amiable, and I think that that would be a really good plan. It will require some thinking outside of the box sometimes. But how I believe it can be done is by board members being involved with every single group that goes on here. Board members, I believe, should be involved by going to school sites and sitting down and listening to what people have to say to them. I believe that board members should be involved in negotiations, maybe not as speakers, but certainly as listeners, so that they can hear all that's going on between the negotiating team and the negotiating team. I really think that the best way for relations to be good amongst people is for people to get to know one another. So that maybe I don't agree with something that somebody says in a particular subject area, but I can at least find some goods in them that I can agree with, or ways that when I'm done arguing with you, we can still go outside and say goodnight, see you next week, and all the rest, because it's a given that personalities and opinions are different. But it's really important when so many different types are going to get together and work on so many different issues, that at the end of the day, you can still remember we're all people, we all get up in the morning, we all get dressed, we all eat breakfast, and we all go about our business. And consequently, we are all still about the same. We just have different philosophies, and we need to be able to discuss those openly with enough respect that you don't feel like somebody's trying to shut you down every time you open your mouth, and then you go on about your business. The best way to do that is to get involved in all the things that are done. Now, everybody has something else to do. You can't just be involved in every single thing. But you can have committees or representatives, and you can go pick 3 priorities that are important to you. Maybe it's how ag is going or the farm area. Well, I guess we shouldn't use the farm. Maybe how some particular subject area, science, is doing. Sit in on a meeting once in a while. Or how is it going with the budget priorities that every school sets up? Well, sit with them like the site council or something once in a while, or just go park yourself at a teacher's room at a site and invite people to come talk to you. What is important to them? What do they want? How can you help them? And you listen, and you come back, you report it, you all discuss it, and you come to middle ground. It's not hard to come to middle ground, it's just slow. And so you have to be patient about it. You know, that's how I think you can do that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Lori.
All right, Mr. Branson, what assets or strength do you have that would strengthen our board?
As I pointed out earlier, my biggest asset is that I don't have vested interest. I'm not on the teacher side, I'm not on the board side, I'm not on the superintendent side. Coming in with a fresh perspective from outside, I do have extensive experience in HR, so communications, contractual negotiations. I've trained on our contract in California and somewhat in Texas. So I understand the difference, the difficulties in negotiating around that. I have considerable background in communication skills. I can't match the personal interaction that the other two candidates have within a year and a half here in a whole different school set. But I do bring a different perspective. And somebody from outside who is passionate about living in the area that we're in. So I do bring that. I think that's the biggest asset I bring.
Thank you. Mr. Colvig, what assets or strengths do you have that would strengthen our board?
Well, first I have a fascination with organizations and what makes different organizations successful or not successful. And I can bring some skills, taught bookkeeping and accounting at the high school and the college level. Taught bookkeeping and accounting at Lassen College up in Susanville. And I've taught bookkeeping and accounting in high school. So I understand the numbers part of it. And I am fascinated by what makes an organization successful. And so I would bring that fascination in my background with my doctorate organizational leadership, where we studied that, and that was most of the test questions. That I could share that expertise with the board, and then work to see if there's any areas where we can improve and work toward greater success. So if we're successful, then why, and then what can we do to enjoy greater success? And if we're successful in one area, how can we transfer that success to another area? So my answer is going to be I would want to bring to the board expertise in management skills, not necessarily to be the manager, but to understand what kind of management techniques help an organization to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Colvig. Mrs. Nunez, what assets or strengths do you have that would strengthen our board?
Probably, I know. I think that one of my biggest assets, I think, is that I am able to understand things. I don't agree with a lot of things sometimes, but if I can understand your position or your reason for it, then certainly if it's going to be a matter of can I support it, well, yeah, if I understand it, even if it's not my opinion. And so I think that that's something that would be helpful for the board. I also believe that, I've been here a long while. I know a whole lot of what goes on, and most of the time I've watched it. Most of the time I've sat and watched all of the decisions that are made, all the different styles that people have when they come into whatever positions that they have that has the opportunity to make the decisions. And mostly I really do think that with all that background, it's still in my head, so it will it will be advantageous because I can remember what I've watched. You know how you sometimes say, well, out of 10 people, I'd like this part and this part and this and on and on. Well, I think that I have that, you know, and I truly believe that everything I've ever watched has taught me at least something, and generally has parts that I wished were a little more incorporated in me. And I think that given that and the length of the background that I have, it would be an asset. I can sit, I can listen. I also know enough people that I think have enough confidence in me that they can come and tell me what they think, and I can present it to whoever needs to hear it. Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, we're back around to me. We're on question 9, and we have 12.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Just to let you know,
Thank
we
you.
are coming
I
down
was
to
just
it,
thinking,
guys.
do we finish? No.
Can we take a 5-minute break? Can we do that?
I think that'd be a good idea, 'cause it's sort
Too
of
tired
dragging
of
on.
hearing me? No.
Time we get down to maybe 10
I'm only
questions next time.
sweating. No.
But one thing I
Oh,
would
no.
suggest to the board
Where's the
members
cookies?
is that on the
Yeah.
second
I
page
know.
of
No.
your,
Yeah, I want one of
of
there.
your sheet, that you put the person's first name so that there's
Oh,
a
yes, thank
record,
you.
so that they don't get jumbled up.
I'm way ahead of you,
All right.
way ahead of you.
Thank you.
Where are the night pistol?
Thank you,
So
Chris.
you found it, Matt?
The little kids' bathrooms are okay.
Oh, they are?
The little kids are as tall as us. What is that?
The little kids.
Yeah.
Bathroom? Is there one?
No, the actual.
What happened to the bathroom that used to be in here? You know, there used to be one.
It's on the right. You'll see the boys.
They just disappeared. Got covered up.
In there, by the way.
Yes, you did. I was in the middle of talking to that. Oh, it might be. I need to change that. It's from the previous recorder. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, would you be available this minute? Yeah. Okay.
Is it a little hot in here, or is it? Oh, okay, me too. Oh, all right. I was thinking, I know I passed.
A little while ago.
Well,
and it
yeah,
stopped.
and then it quit. I know what I
That's
was
what I
thinking.
thought. I thought, ooh, is that on timer?
Exactly. Let's push the
I
on.
think the way the air conditioning works in this place is it's either too hot
Or too cold? Oh.
It's kind of take your
So either in between.
That's for sure.
good in between.
Okay, good.
And we have an understanding of it, you know, my bill.
I know, I was up at 5. I should have been in bed a half hour ago. You know, this is what we call a lengthy day.
Still have more smoke if it's kind of hazy.
Yeah.
It is, huh?
But not close to us now, is it? I thought they
I'm
were all
aware
pretty
of,
far
I've
south.
been incommunicado for the last 5 days.
Oh, well, yeah, that's good. That's true.
Completely incommunicado.
Lean up against something.
We're not floating on the river.
Nothing.
So, you know, it's more fun for it.
Come out, wonder if everything is still. No cell phone.
Nothing is.
No news, no newspapers.
Exactly.
No emergencies. And generally, it takes a couple of days to just get it.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
No, it's never that. Colorado River.
Yeah.
Canyon far preferable.
I went with Katie one time. It's the first time I've done it in 3 weeks.
Go ahead.
Wait, that was, might be hard getting back to
No.
work.
We're in a brief recess. What do you need?
Hi, I just wanted you to know that I'm still here. And they're having a little break, you know, to go to the bathroom and stuff. But I should, huh? Yeah, well, life is hard. No, but anyway, and just so that I figure it'll probably take maybe 20 or 40 or something more minutes, but I should be. Well, yeah, people have to use the bathroom. But, yeah, so they're on one now, but anyway, so I just didn't want you to think that I was having some nice time in a great restaurant enjoying life. I wanted you to know. Yeah. Not finished yet. Three more questions. I didn't start until
4 more, we're on 9, 10, 11, 12.
10, 11, and 12.
And the 12 will be, well, summarized, that's usually.
Start this until like 7 or something, so. Yeah, I'm trying not
Yeah, nobody, there wasn't
Oh,
anybody
yeah.
there this Monday
Yeah.
either.
And that went over okay. No, they knew there was.
Left in there again.
$1,600 chair.
Yeah, they knew, and it wasn't double. Yes, it was. That's exactly the issue. But either way, I'm in it.
4 more questions. About 4 more pounds.
But I just wanted you to know I'll be home.
I was tempted to make a sound like drinks.
I know, let's have a little entertainment, exactly. Yeah, I'm sitting here, yeah, I'll have 2. Wouldn't that be cute? Gosh, I haven't been yelled at in public in a long time.
Okay, let's go back into open session. I think, what was it?
It's me.
Okay, and you're asking a question, which question?
Number 9.
Number 9, so we're just starting with 9, okay. All right, we know where we are, where we're going?
Question is, what is your view of the collective bargaining process and the role that trustees should play in the process?
The collective bargaining process is the opportunity to come together as the leadership, in this case, the leadership of the school district and the different contractual organizations to determine what is a fair distribution of the budget against what's the rates of inflation, what's going on as changes in hours, in jobs, in definitions of requirements. And so it's that opportunity to come in and open up, basically, depending on how the organization does it, to open up, to redefine, to make new directions for your organization by getting a fair interaction between the school district and the leadership of the union organizations. So it's about how do you align resources and what changes do you see to make effective movement in your organization to move away from what we've always done and where we're going. I would wager that what teachers do today is not the same that teachers did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I know it wasn't 30 years ago when my wife was still teaching. For one thing, we got this thing called internet. It's really cool. But there's a lot of different things that come into it, and again, in our organization, I have had some experience on teaching contractual language and sitting in with our HR lawyers as they've taught our managers contractual language. I see bargaining as difficult, but not impossible, and it should be something that is fair to both sides, but that fairness has to be transparent. And if an organization, either side, negotiates without transparency, and I'm not talking about, keeping a couple things close to your vest. If there is an intent to deceive, then that breaks trust between both sides. And I believe that collective bargaining is important. I'm a very pro collective bargaining person, because it does allow everybody to have a voice. If they choose to exercise it, is up to them, but it gives them that voice with the Teachers Association, with the credentialed and certificated organizations. And it also defines what they can do during that period that the contract's in place. Now, the board, the trustees, their role, as far as the definition goes, is to make sure that one side or the other is not either giving away the house or taking the house. The trustees are responsible for monitoring the budget to make sure that it is fair, and I don't like the word equal, but I'd use the word equitable, that there is an equitable distribution going forward. So when you talk about changes, and again, in an organization, especially a smaller school district, you have fewer resources to draw from. So your teachers have to do more, and that's a fair thing. I have no problem with expecting people to do more. I have a problem with expecting people to do more for the same or less. It was interesting that you tabled, was it item G? Because there was very little knowledge about that, from what I understand, that transparency counts. And so to me, the collective bargaining process is incredibly important to both leadership and the rank and file, the people who are doing the work. It's how we define where we're going, and the trustees are there to make sure that the budget is intact at the end of the process, and that's the role. It's not to sit in. Now, I don't disagree that there's nothing that it's inappropriate to sit in and listen. It's certainly not a contributory, for me, from where I sit, it's not a contributory position as a trustee, because that's the role of the CEO of the organization, where we are more the board.
Okay, the question is, what is your view of the collective bargaining process and the role that trustees should play in the process?
Well, back to you've got a pie, and everybody may want their piece. But I think that the board goal should be to make sure that we are able to attract the best staff possible within the budget. And in terms of negotiating salaries and benefits and working conditions and stuff, we need to certainly listen and listen to the whole community on what is the desire in terms of treatment of employees that are within the school district, and then strive to take that piece of pie and spread it out so that it can be appeasing to everyone, but not a gift of the whole pie. And so the negotiations part, I think the board should take a look at the overview and determine a policy and what's going to happen in terms of board policy, and then stay out of the picture unless consulted.
Great, thank you.
Want me to just talk? I know about collective bargaining.
What your view is of collective bargaining and the role that you think the trustees should play in the process.
Well, I believe very strongly in collective bargaining, especially when it's transparent, and I believe that it's transparent when you use one set of numbers. In this case, when we use the district's numbers and they're laid out, and you say you have this much money and this many bills and this is what's left over and this is how we're gonna split it. And I believe that that's a really good thing. I do know that there are ways to trade monetary items for working condition items that sometimes works out real well. I do know that it's very important that all people feel they've had a voice, and that no one walked in and said, whatever you want, the answer's no. Or whatever you want, you get it. You can't do it that way. There does have to be give and take. But I do firmly believe that, at least for the first few years, it's a of the new group of people doing bargaining, that it's a really good idea to have a board member sit in. I don't believe it's necessary at all for them to be involved in the conversation. There's always a time when each group goes to wherever and discusses whatever is on the table. But I do believe it's very important that the board members are able to become aware firsthand of what goes on. Because having been on the side of the table where I was representing the Teachers Association, lots of times the feedback I'd get from board members was way different than what I thought they were hearing about what we were doing during a negotiation session. And so I think that if you have a representative that can come back and say, well, this and this and this went on, you don't have to give your opinion, you can merely say this and this and this went on, then you have a better idea of why a month down the road somebody's writing articles to the newspaper or has signs all over 101 or whatever's going on, instead of it just kind of blindsiding you with, whoa, I thought everybody was happy and now look, you know. And so I think it's real important that everyone get as involved as is legally possible, and that's one of the things a board member can do. I think if you don't have bargaining, you know, collective bargaining, then you have a please give me or please don't, and you end up not treating people as equals, you end up treating them as subordinates and bosses, and I don't think that's ever good in a negotiation setting.
Great, thank you.
We're on number 10, right? Mr. Branson, what do you see are the critical roles of a board member?
Are the
Critical roles of a board member.
I would think that, to me, the critical roles of a board member, certainly fiduciary responsibility, understanding the budget, understanding the allocation of the budget, understanding how the local disbursement of funds counts. Where does our money come from? How do we get rid of that? How do we disperse that out? What are the criteria that the superintendent uses to disperse the funds? The principal goal is to know what the community needs to be effective in building our schools, not just in funding, but in building our schools, and what do we need to do there? How do we make sure that we're getting the best and putting out the best students? Because once they leave here, and whether they leave in 10th, 11th, or 12th grades, as some do, are they still able to go out and function on their own? And so the critical role of the board member for me is to make sure that we are providing them as much as possible in the ability to perform critical thought, to go out and reason where they intend to go, what they intend to do, and what are the reasons for their decisions. And the board helps to set the vision for the schools to do that at the different ranges. So when you start talking K through 6, talking a very safe, very protected environment, a lot of challenge, a lot of fun, a lot of engagement. You start seeing changes 7 to 9, where the students are, it becomes more important to critically think. The board has to help building that vision of where those are going, because what an elementary school student needs, or what an elementary school teacher needs, are different from what a middle school or junior high teacher and student needs, different from a high school. And it's the board that helps to define those. So between fiduciary responsibility and defining vision, to me, those are the two biggest critical roles of the board, because everything else seems to fall, what I've heard tonight, and what I've heard down home when my kids were still in school. Everything falls into those two areas for the board.
Mr. Colvick, what do you see are the critical roles of a board member?
Well, in terms of budget, to make sure that the ship stays afloat, that, we're living within our means. And listening and asking all the time, from all of the, I hate the word stakeholders, but that seems to be the word that fits right now, is all the people involved in the educational process, parents, students, other community members, teachers, staff, and anyone that is around kids. Listening and asking, where are our successes and why are we successful? Where are our failures or our deficiencies right now, and how can we turn those into successes? So listening and asking with the overriding issue of maintaining the budget in a manner that's going to keep the ship afloat.
Mrs. Nunez, what do you see are the critical roles of board members?
Well, I do believe that accessibility is probably the biggest. That is where you have to learn to sit and listen and be available to people to come and speak to you so that they will trust that you're going to look out for their best interests. I believe finances are real important because if you don't have any money, you're not going to run the school. I think that the board members' big job is to set policies and to make sure that everyone is aware of what the policy is and how it's going to affect them. And then I do believe that it's to deal with personnel.
Okay. So, Mr. Branson, what ideas do you have for board members to reach out to stakeholders?
Well, one of the biggest things, when I walked in, I looked around, if the board represents the community's link to what the schools are doing, provide solid education, provide an effective access to a future when they get done with school. If this is the link for the community, as I look around, how much community do we see here? I think one of the first things to do is go out and meet with some of the groups that we have here, and recognizing that the demographics in Willits don't necessarily lend themselves to hitting every group to showing up here. For instance, when I joined my American Legion post, I lowered the average age by a couple of years. It's still important to go out and look at groups like the Wild Bunch, church groups. Let them know that the school board is here to provide them education. So I think that part of the reach out to stakeholders, because the parents of those kids have the highest, they should have the highest confidence. They certainly have the highest outcome from what we do here, because those parents are going to watch their kids. So I think going out and involving ourselves with some of the organizations, at least introduce ourselves and let them know what things are coming up. I know that it's already posted in the newspaper when the meetings are, and don't see that. So for me, community is one. The teachers, some teachers show up, some don't. The board's important because it does impact them, but they should also have the opportunity to be here and hear what's going on. So I'm thinking that, and I believe you brought this up, to go on site as a board member. I think that there's some real value to showing up periodically and letting know what we look like, how pretty we are, and just how much we care. It does make a difference. So reach out to the teachers. Sometimes the superintendent doesn't have a choice. He's got to be here, but if there's a choice, it's good to have that leadership show up. But I think the biggest thing is to go out and put our face in the community, not just to post it and hope people show up, but I mean, there are organizations here that do a lot. The Grange, there's some meetings that go on in there that we could have a presence at, just to meet people. But that outreach counts. Much like volunteer organizations outside, Pioneers for AT&T, any organization that does service, if they're going to get anywhere, they've got to go out and make their face known. And so as I see the stakeholders for the success here, certainly the students, why are there no students here? Why are there very few students here? Because I would not presume to guess the age of people who are sitting here. I am
As we all
clearly
turned into
HR
that.
trained on this. But why are there no students at the board meeting, at least to understand what, I mean, civics class, give them extra credit to show up. I mean, they can sleep here, they can sleep in class, they've got a choice, but at least if they're here, they have a chance to hear the things that are impacting them. So students, parents, the teachers, the community itself is impacted by how well the schools do. And it goes back attendance, as you keep bringing up. Attendance is critical. If the kids aren't attending here, they're doing something else, and it's killing the ADA, that's understandable. But if they're doing something else, it's walking the streets, and hopefully they're on their phones at home, but there's a lot of stuff that comes out of that. It's about how do we get more people here to help to hold the board accountable, because ultimately the community is supposed to have input on this. So outreach is putting our face out there and recognizing, identifying, naming, and going out to the stakeholders. That part I understand.
Mr. Colpick, what ideas do you have for board members to reach out to stakeholders?
Well, be visible and be available, and one way to accomplish that would be to go to as many events as possible, from the kindergarten, whatever, to the middle school, whatever, to Blosser, to go to all the schools and be a visible, maybe even a participating member of some of their events, so that you can meet the parents, meet the students, meet the teachers. And I think that's a tremendous benefit if a school board member can do that. In terms of local groups, the typical, the Rotary, Kiwanis, those kind of clubs, maybe be available there in those kinds of groups, like you mentioned, a couple other groups. And I think most important is if a community member or a teacher or student, if they ask you a question where they're expecting an answer and you can't answer it, you do some research and get back to them. Either, I checked it out, I can't answer that question right now, but I'll get some more information to have follow-up and credibility to our position as a school board member. So if somebody asks us a question, let's try and get them the correct answer as soon as possible. Or, I can't answer that question. So visible and active and attending events.
Thank you. Mrs. Nunez, to be fair, we're going to ask you the same question.
Oh, thank you.
What ideas do you have for board members to reach out to stakeholders?
I have exactly those ideas. And I sort of said that 90 times, but just to remind you, you do need to be accessible. Of course, then I have a favorite, and past practices show, I believe we need food here and water. And so in the old days, I brought some on occasion, and I think it needs to come back with or without me. And that's about it. Maybe a more comfortable chair would be handy once in a while. Other than that, I really do agree with them, and I've already said we need to be accessible.
Thank you. Okay, that completes that round, so move on to Lori.
Question 12, Mr. Branson, do you have any questions of the board?
How are you seeing the demographic changes impacting the school district in Willits over the next 3 to 5 years? As we see daily attendance is dropping, we see up and down for the charter schools, because they publish more recent data overall. What is the school board doing as far as identifying potential budget issues with the attendance? Because right now, there's really no upward swing in our young people, and in fact, looking at the numbers that I've been able to find, it looks like it is in fact either stable or it's mostly stable, it's fluctuating, but it fluctuates online. What does the board see happening over the next 3 to 5 years around attendance and what preparations?
Mr. Neri, would you like to answer that?
No, I don't have the answer to that. I will say that we're doing some things. We don't see ourselves as competing with the charter schools. The charter schools set up its policy, it was adopted by the state. We live within the policies, but I can tell you that when I left the board in 1993, we had 2,400 students in this school system. Now we have about 1,450. So we've lost 1,000. I think the town is bigger than it was in 1993. So there's obviously there's been a great loss of ADA to several different things, to the charter schools, but also to homeschooling, and I think that we've got to look at that. I think that we're opening an experiment at Sherwood School this coming year. We'll see if that attracts students that are going elsewhere, or retain students that might otherwise go there. So I think that we're not oblivious to it, but you know, figuring out what's going to happen in 4 or 5 years is hard to tell. I thought that we would have an upswing of the economy because of the bypass, and upswing of attendance because of the bypass project, which was a huge project. There was virtually nothing. So for me to guess for the next 5 years, I've already struck out once. So I'm probably going to pass.
All right, Mr. Colvig, do you have any questions of the board?
One question I have, and I've got two children that currently work for the district, and I don't know if any of the board members have had relatives working for the district while they're in the position of being a board member. I don't anticipate that being any problem, but do you have any viewpoints on that, any of the board members? Having a relative and working for the district at the same time being a board member.
I think what we do is we recognize that this is a small town, and there's a certain core of people who are active, and it's not surprising that we see, you know, families that are in the school system, and people in the community, you know, who are behind them.
I'd like to address that briefly.
Sure.
Because I find myself in that situation. It is not difficult to recognize when an issue comes before the board that might have a direct impact on that family member. And in those cases, it's incumbent upon you to recuse yourself. Fortunately, those situations arise rarely. Most of the time we're dealing with things at a policy level. And at a policy level, we're affecting pretty much everyone as opposed to an individual. So as long as we recognize we're dealing with everyone, we can vote. But when those issues are specific to an individual, we have to be careful.
Mrs. Nunez, do you have any questions of the board?
No, I don't, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No. I'll ask them later.
Is that the last one?
All right, so that concludes the process. By prior agreement, what we're going to do is we're going to turn these into Trina, and she's going to tabulate the results. So I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but you should have your your name of the candidate on the second page, so that there's a record. The will be available for public inspection, I think. Is it?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
are your personal notes as a board member.
Yeah, usually we
Well,
shred
Yeah,
first.
the overall scores you might be able to do, but.
Yes.
I'm pushing.
I think the scores,
We're actually scoring question 12.
No, we're not scoring question.
oh, really? So you're just gonna disregard, because I scored it.
I did too.
Well, Paula didn't say anything, so.
Well, that's an automatic
Above
5, look
point.
at the car. There you go,
I did
fix
that.
that.
Let me change that,
Score.
that's a different
I was doing
perspective.
it as a maximum score.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once again, my question
Yeah,
is,
no,
are we
we
or
get
are
to
we not
just-
scoring question 12?
No,
If you have something, I will just ignore it.
so
They don't get to
count it.
cry. I know that.
You're mine.
We've made our decision.
You want us to
Chris,
tabulate these?
your opinion on somebody's answer shouldn't be a public record, because it's your opinion.
It's entertainment. Besides, you can run in November, so it don't matter, a year from November. And
Do
then
we
you
have the
don't
white
have to do
smoke
this
ready?
at all. Actually, you don't do anything. You don't pay, you
You
don't
mean
do
like
anything.
LeBron?
Go
No,
to really
like-
strong, yeah, put
Oh,
your name
like
in
the
it.
Pope, oh, like the Pope. I'd say I'm thinking LeBron. like
You know,
Russell.
one of the funniest jokes I ever heard was Fiji Smith.
I know.
Back in the 80s, there was a
I
series
am.
of popes, and they elected a pope, and then he died
I've
like
written all over
3
mine.
weeks later, and then they elected another pope, and he died 2 months later. So it was Baiji was flying back from a timber trip in Oregon, and he
That's
came
what I
in, he
told
says,
them. I should have
I
been
knew
in
it
bed at
was
8 o'clock.
good shape, and I came into Willits, and I looked down, and I saw all
when
these
they're
tepee
done,
burners blowing
anyone
white
has a
smoke.
public still awake, gets to say something, and then they adjourn. Oh, but you know what? It's not on this agenda, but usually they have a deal of, what do you wanna discuss next time? But, that's not written, so they're not gonna discuss anything. No.
Alex, that's the job of the clerk.
You got it.
So Alex, you must have kept bottom side down. Your kayak?
Oh, yeah. I actually didn't do very much. I rode most, I should say, I got to ride on the raft most of the way and let others do the work.
Alright. Knees not quite there yet?
The knee's doing a lot better. I just have shoulder troubles, so I'm still struggling. The knee's a lot better.
You're out front being the scout.
Pretty much. Got, one of our group decided to, follow my son through Rainy Falls. Apparently his skill level wasn't quite what he hoped.
You got a little rain?
Class 5 rapid, clobbering pretty good. He's fine. Raft came out mostly fine. I rode really well.
As soon as they
He
get
saw,
better.
today, he saw
Yeah.
harbor seal 40 miles.
Is it rude to get up and walk off? No. I don't care, send me a letter.
Today, flag spotted on the road.
You know, the thing is that
One of the guys thought it was like a
the union used to, 4 times a year, we bring.
we just seen it in River Otter a
Sadly,
couple miles before.
I never, for 40 years, I've wondered why I don't want to sit down here. But they just can't.
Black bear. Lots of black bear.
That's exactly, and even then,
Got some problem with
I
that.
used to be so disappointed in some of the coworkers for that.
I used to go all the time because I would hope they ask a question about planes.
I know early on this year.
Because they went around in every
We're not very good. And we started to figure out boat skiing.
You know, the principals, they don't even, they were told 3 or 4.
Mother and 2 cousins and then another
Just don't
female
come.
somewhere along the range of the
Report back to school. Gosh, that's part of it, you know. That's so.
No, we didn't.
Site council.
I see. Boats anyway, so it's usually
I guess from now on it goes to, what channel? Well, I guess it's just on a computer, it's not on the, these, doesn't this go to, oh, do they put it on YouTube? So I guess you go to Willits Unified and then go to YouTube, or go to YouTube and Willits Unified?
Normally Richard puts a link on the webpage, go
Oh,
see
and
the,
you just,
and on the district webpage.
Yeah, you tell him the computer later. Which button do I push? No.
You post it on YouTube and then put a link on the main page.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, then help me.
Richard, how soon does it go up?
Tonight. I like this one, so I'll put this up as soon as possible.
All right, thanks. Appreciate your effort on that.
Just type in Willits School Board and you'll get there. Direct link.
Usually the night of, I struggled along with it all the way through rectifying.
I like the one 6 months ago, it was 30 minutes long.
I thought it was good.
And they had 5 people or 6.
Struggling with that.
That's a tough one.
So I haven't gotten quite what.
Waiting on Trina.
Let everybody else go.
You do the math when she's done.
What's impressive is that
For some reason, I don't have Excel on my laptop, which means I would not have to add.
90% of the time it's easier.
Online IT request, take care of that, right?
Right? Put a ticket. Put a ticket.
It isn't, but it's one of the patent authority.
Not terrible.
You require administrator approval.
And you open office.
Open office is easy.
Lots of times you couldn't even take whatever your response.
Yeah.
She's been taken care of. She's been taken care of. 'Cause nothing's
You put it right there.
Yeah, I know.
This was a
It's
bumper
Irish.
here for water, so. You know, I really hope that gets played on.
Yeah.
Somebody came in and hired me. And he says, I picked you because you're Irish. He goes, oh, you're Irish. God, yeah, Irish. You died.
Yeah.
Enjoying that, not doing the same every day part every time.
You know, it is really fun. It is really fun to, when I go there, I'll go volunteer and do this. I only try to do whatever I want when I'm done. It's like being a grandmother. I wish that would come off
I
too.
lasted about 10 days.
Yeah.
And I worked at Cloverdale, you know, as a vice principal of middle school.
Holy
Which was the
cow.
farthest thing in Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, I went down there.
Breakfast.
And I
Yeah, you know, no, truthfully, I didn't go back there.
worked up in Vegas, quite a bit. Megan and real good. Beautiful little place with 2.5 acres.
Whoa.
That's, you have to go to the other.
Yeah, I knew people in Leggett that used to go out there. I've gone to
I received her, I met her in college, I received her
out of sight, good.
2 or 3 to UCs, Sonoma State, and then one girl to MIT.
Wow.
Who'd have thought?
That's a cool group.
And I work in South Fork, Anderson Valley,
Yeah.
Mendocino. So I got a little circuit,
Oh, that's a.
home late on every semester to give my college speech to every single 8th grader. One-on-one, at every single
Wow.
That was, I
You
could only,
won't have a throat.
yeah, I could only go, I said, I can't.
Mr. Branson, what is the group you're talking about? Hog something?
Oh, the Wild Bunch?
One
Wild
every
Bunch?
15 minutes.
They're a
I
motorcycle
spent
group
about 4
around
months.
Willits that does a lot of service stuff around.
Wild
Was
Bunch.
that one on?
Yeah, did you go to the Frontier Days?
So,
I wasn't here.
I set up.
At Frontier Days,
high
they
school
had the
Yeah.
matched it with
sliders,
Okay.
we take a
they
day.
were running that because they do a big deal.
And then some kind of
Okay.
Yeah.
So you drew the short straw over the Frontier.
So I've been keeping busy doing that stuff.
Oh, were you
But
there?
My real passion is
I was there for March,
Legion
I was there for
help
March,
kids that need help.
other parts.
Kids that are in college.
Do you guys meet on a regular basis?
The Legion?
The Wild?
Oh, I'm not a member of the Wild Bunch, they're too close to an MC for me.
I just spent
I like
yesterday
riding
and
with
today
a
with two
group of people that don't
volunteer
have
projects.
bright colors.
It's so great because they're
They meet on a fairly regular
groups I
basis.
met
If
with.
there's a web page, they have a Facebook page.
Past 3 days, they're all
Do you ride?
juniors.
No, not anymore.
And
I don't heal well.
Kids I worked with in middle school.
Don't bounce like you used to,
Well,
huh?
the point is you don't fall off. That's the
High
key, you
school.
don't fall off.
Yeah.
Especially
Or
saying
don't
that
get
to-
pulled out in front of.
Yeah.
That's what happened to my son. Mine, a guy lost control of his car on
I
the
heard.
freeway when I was 18. I spent 9.5 months in bed. But what explains everything is I had a
Now
headache.
you gotta get
That's
them.
why-
Even high school students wanna go to grad school.
Must have been a pretty good job.
But it was, I love riding.
Oh, yeah.
I leave tomorrow for Texas.
Maybe they just wanted to get away from the corruption in
Kansas,
Mexico
and I'm riding back.
involving law enforcement. So maybe it was a conscious choice to be a better human being. Are you kidding me, Chris?
Yeah, I hear this.
You are, I mean, like, where have you been? Those fucking sheriffs are the biggest criminals on the planet. Amber Smith. Yes.
Oh, lather it off.
He was the one who led the raid. They couldn't rob the Indians because there was too many cameras on it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't believe the feds haven't come in and taken on and all.
But you've got,
guys.
Well, I don't know.
in this area, you've got Rocca.
No, he is their leader.
They've got a
You know, Peter Hoy. He's not a scumbag for back in the
They
day.
have not long patch on the back.
Yeah, and his protege is Bruce Smith.
I used to.
Well, I happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, but I am adamantly sure. I'm not done with that. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those criminals showing up at other places and robbing them.
Just getting my coat back.
Yeah, I'm gonna sleep, okay?
So, I'm just gonna have you announce the results.
Me?
Yes.
All right. You want me to total points for each person?
Yes, please.
Okay. Total points for Mr. Branson was 124. Total points for Mr. Kolvik, 172. And total points for Ms. Nunez, 165.
So, thank you all for participating. I think we had an excellent pool of candidates. So, I guess to conclude the festivities, we'll have our clerk swear in our new board member.
Are you?
So I believe it is Mr. Colbert, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Are we ready? Raise your right hand, please. I, Robert Colvin,
I, Robert Goldberg,
do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California,
of the United States and of the Constitution of California.
that I will take this obligation freely
I will take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. And that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
I make the motion to adjourn.
Do we have public comment? Any public comment? Items not on the agenda? Hearing none, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
No? Aye. That's 3 to 1. I had fun.
So I